Part 61. Fantasy, Me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 602. 10 days later. The war continues. The three killing formations were in motion, and the murderous aura-like waves swept across the void, making billions of stars eclipse the entire Sumeru world. They all seemed to be trembling, as if they were about to disintegrate. Is this the immortal king fighting? Terrible. Menkingzi stood in the void. Next to him was himself a million years later. At this moment, his whole body was covered with a layer of black mist, with only a pair of eyes exposed. The reason for doing this was because after they left the Tianji Tower, he was immediately noticed by the heavenly Dao of this world, and countless divine chains of order suppressed Menkingzi in all directions 1 million years later. It can be said that Menkingzi, 1 million years later, is carrying the suppressive power of heavenly Dao. Walking in the world. After all, he is not from this time, but from the future. If he is an ordinary cultivator, that's it. There is no abnormality at all. But this time, his opponents are all at the immortal king level existence. These people can see what is unusual about him at a glance. If someone sees it in advance, it will be a big trouble. For an immortal king who cannot exert his full strength, others don't mind killing him here. After all, there is nothing to lose by killing Menkingzi. Maybe he can also make a lot of money. What you see now is just the tip of the iceberg. The real show is yet to come. Menkingzi, a million years later, whispered softly. His eyes, inadvertently, glanced at a small valley not far away. Although the surrounding earth was shattered, this valley was still intact. Why? Look, they are all unusual. If he remembers correctly, the Taishu immortal king who will become famous in the future should be in the valley at this moment. If the two people had different views, they would rely on their previous friendship to destroy the underworld of Xianguang realm as a bond. Maybe we can even become friends. Counting the time, he should be unable to sit still. Menkingzi, a million years later, murmured with a smile on his lips. What? Menkingzi heard what his version of himself a million years later seemed to be saying, but he didn't hear it clearly, so he asked. Nothing. Menkingzi, a million years later, shook his head gently. Well. Menkingzi's expression froze. We are all our own people, it's just that we are in different time and space, and we have to hide it even from ourselves. Although there is doubt in my heart. But Menkingzi did not pursue the question, but changed the topic. You just said that this is just the tip of the iceberg. What do you mean? In his opinion, the Sumeru realm is about to be completely destroyed. Do you think the fight between immortal kings is limited to this? Menkingzi, a million years later, looked at the void in the distance and said softly, you are wrong. This is blocked by the formation. If there are not 3 large formations, even I cannot bring you here. 5 immortal kings are fighting. Menkingzi, who is as powerful as a million years later, can't guarantee that he is safe, let alone a person whose strength is only the great emperor. There is no need for the aftermath of the fight. Just a look, all you can send him directly to the afterlife. This. Menkingzi clicked his tongue. He pursed his lips and glanced around, trying to find a place to hide, but found that there were only broken walls and ruins around him, and there was no place to hide at all. After searching to no avail, he looked at himself next to him. Wait a moment, you should also take action, right? A million years later, Menkingzi raised his eyebrows. He suddenly turned around and took a deep look at himself. After a long sigh, he turned his palm over and a talisman appeared in his palm. This talisman was golden yellow all over. I don't know what kind of material it is made of. Mysterious runes are engraved on it. Every line is intertwined with the principles of heaven, which is extremely profound. This is given to you, it can withstand the immortal king's attack, and can be used to save your life at critical moments. Menkingzi, a million years later, said in a deep voice. The two are the same person, but they belong to different time periods. It only takes one look to understand the other's thoughts. But let a million years later, what Menkingzi didn't expect was that his former self would be so shameless, and even the trouble would fall on his own head. And this good thing. Menkingzi's eyes lit up, and he took it over happily and looked it up and down. With his eyesight, although he couldn't see anything special, his intuition told him that this thing is worth a lot of money. It's worth $1 million at least. Could he still deceive himself about what he would give him years later? In his eyes, everyone in the world today has evil intentions. Only himself 1 million years later and the senior Tianji building master would not deceive himself. Like this, there are not many good people left in the world. This talisman can only be used once, so be sure not to use it carelessly. Menkingzi, 1 million years later, solemnly said. Menkingzi frowned. Can it only be used once? So picky? Is this really who he will be 1 million years later? And you? Menkingzi still wanted to ask for some benefits. But just as he opened his mouth, he didn't have time to say anything. Far away. Bang. A loud noise came. A divine sword soared straight into the sky. The sword energy was clanging, turning into a mountain, overwhelming the world, making everything in the world eclipse before the sword energy soaring into the sky. The sword light was like a rainbow, rumbling. There was a sound. A terrifying power erupted. At this moment, it was as if a kendo god was resurrected, covering the world. A majestic figure walked over step by step from the shoulder of the horizon. He held a long sword and was full of fighting spirit. A pair of the sword light burst out in his eyes. Following his pace, the void here suddenly blurred and became extremely chaotic. Only the rules of the sword were extremely clear, expounding the principles of heaven and earth. Taishu, Immortal King. Senior Taishu. Menkingzi and himself 1 million years later spoke at the same time. Menkingzi looked at Taishu in the distance, and then at himself next to him. At this time, he suddenly understood. It seemed that himself 1 million years later had been holding back. Just waiting for this moment. This style of fishing in troubled waters has not changed even if 1 million years have passed. The real show finally begins. 1 million years later, Menkingzi looked at the figure in the distance without blinking, with a hint of hope flashing across his face. Looking at it from now on, the direction of history has not changed at all, everything is as he originally was. The memory is the same. Then what happens next? Is my opportunity coming soon? Not far away. When Taishu stepped into the void, he looked at the 3 killing formations in the distance. Break. With a soft shout, the sword energy moved the sky, and a sword light behind him turned into thousands, dense and countless sword lights, covering the sky and the earth. A piece of Wanyang was formed. As the words fell to the ground, the sword energy emitted. The sound of clanking pierced through the void, and he quickly slashed towards the formation. At the same time, in the killing array, Lukinzi was already on the verge of collapse. He was covered in blood, and a sword mark on his chest almost split him in two. The starkly visible white bones were particularly breathtaking. He stood on the ground, looking coldly at Lu Qingyu in the sky, his undisguised murderous intent filling every inch of space. Although his strength is not weaker than Lu Qingyu, to some extent, he is even stronger. But nothing. The other person is not a person. There are 3 killing formations to help him. Even he has been hit hard now. Although he has not died, he is about to run out of fuel. It is estimated that before long, I am afraid that I will not be able to hold on anymore. Beside him, on another battlefield, the war situation is also not optimistic. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain single-handedly suppressed the combined efforts of the seventh ancestor and Lu Xiancheng, leaving them with only the ability to parry but no ability to fight back. 10 days passed. Lu Xiancheng, who was already seriously injured, had his body exploded several times. Each time the body recovers, it consumes a few more points than the last time. It is estimated that this will happen several times, even if the Lord of Tianmang Mountain does not take the initiative. Lu Suanquan's heritage will also be burned up. Are we really going to perish here today? Lu Qinzi was unwilling to give up. He stared at Lu Qingyu high in the sky, wishing to kill him with his own hands, but the heavy injuries on his body reminded him all the time that he should have made plans in advance. Keep Qingshan here, and he is not afraid of not being able to survive. As long as the injuries are healed, the three of them will still have a high chance of winning against Lu Qingyu and Lu Qingyu. The reason why they are not opponents this time is because they were tricked by the other party. Without the help of the killing formation, it is estimated that the two of them would have been there long ago. Just ran away. Boom. No. On the void. A loud cry came. Lu Suanquan's body exploded from the sky and turned into blood mist. Where his body exploded, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain was covered in blood and slowly retracted his palm. Now. He stood bathed in blood, as if a demon god was standing there, looking down at the world, making people feel terrified. Xiancheng. The seventh patriarch yelled, but to no avail. He wanted to stop the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, but he alone was no match for him. Whoever the Lord of Tianmang Mountain wanted to deal with, he could only watch. This time, if you want to restore your body, it is not that simple. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain raised his eyes and looked at Lu Xiancheng, who was collecting blood essence. A sneer flashed at the corner of his mouth. He grabbed it with his big hand and said in a cold voice, "After hundreds of millions of years, you are the first immortal king to fall in my hands. Today, I will use your blood to announce to all worlds that I, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, have returned again." As he spoke, his palms glowed, and the light shone on the mountains and rivers for eternity. It seemed that it could trap immortals and gods, and he quickly grabbed Lu Suanquan's soul. If he was caught by the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, he would shudder just thinking about the consequences. "Feng Sheng, you dare!" The eyes of the seventh patriarch were about to burst. He soared into the sky, and the spear in his hand flew across the sky, piercing the world, and stabbed the Lord of Tianmang Mountain between the eyebrows. His sharp aura was unstoppable. He wanted to surround Wei and save Zhao. "Why don't I dare?" The Lord of Tianmang Mountain turned his head and glanced at the seventh ancestor jokingly. He raised his other hand, raised two fingers, and clamped the spear lightly with a clang. "You are about to run out of gas, and the next one will send you on your way." The Lord of Tianmang Mountain sneered and knocked the opponent away with a snap of his fingers. He turned around, his eyes fell on Lu Xiancheng again, and said indifferently, "It's not easy for you to persist to this point under the three killing formations, but that's all. Let's hit the road. Soon, your tribe will come down to accompany you. Even if I die, I will pull you with me." Lu Suanquan's soul glowed. He floated in the sky, and suddenly a terrifying aura rushed out from his body, as if it could penetrate the past, present and future, and spread across all the heavens and worlds. The supreme divine power made the three killing arrays tremble. Seems to be broken at any time. The breath escapes. The stars in the sky are eclipsed by it. No. The seventh ancestor roared. His old body was sublimated to the extreme, burning countless details, and rushed forward to prevent this from happening. He could see that Lu Xiancheng wanted to self-destruct. An immortal king, risking everything, his self-destruction power is terrifying. Not to mention the three killing formations in front of him, even the Lord of Tianmang Mountain can be severely damaged. Lu Xiancheng wants to use his life to open a path for the other two a way out. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain frowned, flew away, and said in a deep voice, "I'm a little brave. They are not immortal kings. They can risk their lives at the last moment. When they reach this point, they are already immortal. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, they can come back again. But often, many immortal kings are because of being given a glimmer of hope." And covered his eyes, and finally died sadly. But even if he died, as long as a little bit of the true spirit is immortal, you can start all over again in the next life. If a Taoist friend can point out the way forward and remember the memories of the past life, he will still be a genuine person. The immortal king. On the other hand, self-destruction. Then there is nothing. Hundreds of millions of years of cultivation turned into running water and completely disappeared from the world. Because of this, very few immortal kings will use this method regardless of the cost. Retreat. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain glanced at the seventh ancestor and Luqianzi, and said unwillingly, "There is an immortal king who is going to blow himself up. It would be unwise for him and others to stay here." Just when he and Lu Qingyu thought about it, when he was about to leave temporarily, there was a loud bang, and billions of sword rays shattered the formation and shot towards him. Zheng! 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 The sword light is like a rainbow. It is like mercury pouring down the ground, covering the sky and the earth. Every corner and every sword light is like a living creature. The moment it penetrates the formation, it aims its spearhead at Lu Qingyu and the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. Puff! 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 Lu Qingyu, who had many injuries on his body, was directly knocked into the ground. The unsuspecting Lord of Tianmang Mountain was also in a very embarrassed state and could barely block all the sword light. "It's you." The Lord of Tianmang Mountain looked to the sky, his eyes were cold, and he squeezed out two words between his teeth. "Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning." Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 603. Beyond the Sky. At the beginning of time, he stood facing the wind, with the sword light in his hand splitting the sky. At his feet, the three killing formations collapsed suddenly, making a tooth-breaking roar. Countless rocks shot out in all directions, and soon disappeared. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain raised his head and looked at Taishu, his eyes filled with ice. This person in front of me. He couldn't be more familiar with it. At first, the other party suddenly became the immortal king outside Tianmang Mountain, which was like a slap in his face. If Lu Qingyu hadn't regained his strength at that time, he would have killed the other party on the spot. Now it seems, it was the most unwise move for me to let the opponent escape in the first place. If he were killed, how could things happen today? I let you escape by chance that day, but you dare to come back today. Are you looking for death?" The Lord of Tianmang Mountain said in a cold voice. Seeing that the overall situation had been decided, at this moment, an unexpected person suddenly killed him, catching him a little off guard. If he remembered correctly, this person should have just become an immortal. The king was the king, and then he was severely injured. It was impossible for the opponent's injuries to recover so quickly, let alone come here to disrupt the situation. You know, the opponent had just broken through, and before his realm was stable, he was seriously injured. If you recuperate well, your realm will fall if things go wrong. Could it be that? The Lord of Tianmang Mountain was shaken, and a figure in green clothes appeared in the depths of his mind. Is the owner of Tianji helping him regain his strength behind the scenes? Yes. The other party was so seriously injured. Only the master of Tianji himself can help him regain his strength and stabilize his cultivation in a short time. Since I dare to come today, I am fully confident. Taishu responded indifferently. He did not take the Lord of Tianmang Mountain to heart at all. At this time, the three kings of the Lu family had been seriously injured, but how could Lu Qingyu and the Lord of Tianmang Mountain fare better? These two people were also seriously injured and the other was slightly injured. Injured. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain was in a better condition, but Lu Qingyu felt uncomfortable. It was very troublesome to deal with Lu Qinzi in the first place, and he was almost severely injured. Just now, when he broke the formation again, he took advantage of it, and now Lu Qingyu's, although his condition is better than Lu Suanquan's, it's not much better. It can be said that it's 4 against 2. The balance of victory has begun to tilt. It's not good. Today, we can complete our efforts in one battle and completely keep the opponent here. Does your confidence come from the owner of Tianji? The Lord of Tianmang Mountain spoke in a deep voice. If not. Taishu smiled at each other. Do you think you are the only one who has been to Tianji Tower? Hearing these words, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain felt a little heavy. He secretly thought that he was too careless. He should have known that the reason why the other party became the immortal king was because of the help of the master of Tianji. He arranged it secretly. It should have been expected. The other party would also go to Tianji Tower to buy information. At the beginning, the reason why he did not expect this was that in the final analysis, he still did not take Taishu to heart. In his eyes, how much of a threat could a person who had just become an immortal king pose? However, reality gave him a loud slap in the face. Bang! The ground exploded. Lu Qingyu rushed up from the ground in embarrassment. He was surrounded by fairy mist, and the law of reincarnation emerged, reversing time and space, and quickly recovered from his injuries. In the blink of an eye, his body recovered as before, but his eyes, staring at Taishu. Even if you have been to Tianji Tower, you will still fall in the future. Lu Qingyu said in a cold voice. He will not give up on today's matter. The other party can go to Tianji Tower and buy his plan. Similarly, he can also get Taishu's whereabouts in Tianji Tower in the future. Once he grasps Taishu's whereabouts. At that time, a person who had just become the immortal king was not his opponent when he joined forces with the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. King you have no future. The seventh ancestor stepped forward, looked at Lu Qingyu with cold eyes and said something. Then, he came to Taishu, bowed his hands and said tremblingly, "Thank you so much, fellow Taoist, for your help today. I will worry about you in the future. No matter how you speak, fellow Taoist, the Lu family will never delay." Beside him, Lu Qinzi also bowed in salute. Lu Xiancheng also recovered his cultivation. After all, he saw the hope of living. No one wants to die, let alone self-destruct. Fellow Taoists, there is no need to be too polite. The destruction of the underworld is the duty of all monks in the heavens and the world. Taishu stretched out his hand to support him and said with a smile. "Dare I ask, my friend, the Tianji poster you just mentioned?" The seventh ancestor spoke. With a hint of inquiry. Although he had never heard of the words Tianji Lozhu, but he had already guessed something from the conversation between a few people just now. After all, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain is not a weakling. The person who shocked even him was definitely an extremely powerful being. If the person in front of him is really pointed out by the Master Tianji, then that means that the Master Tianji, whom he has never met before, still has a lot of kindness towards the Lu clan. There is no advice from the owner of Tianji. The three kings of the Lu family are in danger today. Not good. We might all fall here together. The senior master of Tianji Tower lives in Dawang City in Tianyuan realm. You can go to see him at any time, but the most urgent task is to deal with these two remnants of the underworld first. Taishu said calmly. As he spoke, he turned to look at the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and Lu Qingyu. Good. After Taishu's reminder, the seventh ancestor also came to his senses. He took a deep breath, and his power increased steadily, like an old immortal god returning to the world. Without the suppression of the formation, his power increased. Reached another peak. almost no weaker than the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain is handed over to us, the Lu clan, and as for the traitors of the Lu clan, how about we hand it over to fellow Taoists? The seventh ancestor said in a negotiating tone. With his eyesight, it is not difficult to see that Taishu has just made a breakthrough. Letting him deal with the Lord of Tianmang Mountain is undoubtedly asking for death. Lu Qingyu has already been severely injured. Let Taishu deal with it? If so, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Can. Taishu didn't make any excuses and nodded directly. As soon as he finished speaking, he took action without any hesitation. Clang! The divine sword came out of the body, the sky trembled, the earth below all collapsed, and the stars above exploded instantly, turning into powder and becoming gorgeous. The sword of the immortal King Level drew a mysterious trajectory in the void, imitating the ancient Milky Way, hanging down for 9 days, and slashed towards Lu Qingyu. Next to him, the seventh ancestor also exhaled, shouted coldly, and connected with Lu Qinzi to take action together. The two of them penetrated the chaos with one sword and one spear, carrying the sky. Thunder rushed towards the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. The power of the god was endless, and the pressure of the world made countless creatures tremble with fear. Although the power has not yet fallen, the murderous intention has swept all directions, and the entire Sumeru the world is trembling, almost completely falling apart. What do you think? Lu Qingyu's face was pale. He glanced at the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and quickly sent a message to ask. At the moment, the situation is very unfavorable for them. The other party has added a new immortal king in full power, which can be said to be as powerful as a rainbow, and the two of them fought hard for a long time, and consumed most of his energy. If he continued to fight, the results would not be optimistic. Perhaps, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain could leave calmly. But Lu Qingyu asked himself, given his current state, it was impossible to leave this battlefield without paying some price. Before, he is arrogant and thinks that he has unparalleled talent. Even the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and his third uncle are not looked down upon. But after this battle, he suddenly realized that each of these people who had experienced the underworld war and survived had two brushes, which he could not handle at all. Just now, he relied on the killing formation to support him, but was seriously injured by Lu Qinzi. Without the help of the killing array, he might have been completely suppressed by Lu Qinzi by now. If the situation changes, let's leave first. When the news spreads that we can break through to the quasi-immortal emperor, we can still make a comeback. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain responded quickly. After finishing his words, he descended with endless divine power. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain remained calm in the face of danger. He let out a long roar and flew up against the sky. He turned into a god, reaching a height of millions of feet. Standing tall against the sky and the earth. His breath became clouds, and his voice became thunder. His eyes were like the sun and moon, hanging on the sky, shining brightly, like a giant who created the world in ancient times, with mighty power in all directions. He grabbed it with his big hand, majestic and heavy mana surge. Boom! This palm, with an unimaginable aura, spans the ancient and modern times, covers the universe, and blooms with unparalleled power, causing the faces of all creatures in the world to change dramatically. The sky seems to explode at this moment. Just now, across the formation the magic made them tremble with fear, not to mention that there was no formation to block it now. The terrifying aura spread out, and the entire Sumeru realm was quickly wiped out by the aftermath. All mountains, rivers, giant mountains, flowers, and trees, even if they were inherited for a long time the sects. Under this power, they were all destroyed quickly, leaving nothing behind. Bang! The endless magical powers collided together and made a deafening roar. For a moment, the stars went out and the earth collapsed. It was a scene of the end of the world. Even the seventh ancestor of the Lu family and Lu Qinzi flew out upside down, and the words in their mouths vomiting blood, his face changed dramatically, and he was obviously not feeling well. The lord of Tianmang Mountain, who turned into a giant, staggered back and stepped into the chaos behind him. His chest was bright red, and he had just resisted a blow from the seventh ancestor and Lu Qian. He was also seriously injured. After glancing at Lu Qingyu, he shouted softly, "Retreat!" As soon as he finished speaking, his body turned into a stream of light, soared into the sky, submerged into the chaos, and soon disappeared. Lu Qingyu looked ugly. He couldn't help but curse secretly as he watched the Lord of Tianmang Mountain disappear into the chaos. The opponent is very strong and can leave calmly. But I don't have that ability. At this time, he was entangled by Taishu, and the Lord of Tianmang Mountain ran away again, which meant that both the seventh ancestor and Lu Qinzi were free to deal with him in any way they wanted. This made him feel extremely bitter. But no matter how he thinks about it, he has already stepped onto the chariot of hell. It is impossible to escape. The only way to escape is right now. Lu Qingyu, why don't you surrender and follow me back to the God realm? Lu Qinzi took action. The long black knife in his hand bloomed with bloody crimson clouds, which quickly enlarged and swept the heaven and earth like Wang Yang. Even the immortal king was very palpitated at this moment. Qingyu, you are on the wrong track and have gone too far. The seventh ancestor was also speaking. His spear was a little empty, and endless stars appeared in the sky, falling quickly. Each star was a star with great mana, carrying endless divine power. Crowding the world. Boom! Countless stars, with long tail flames, streaked across the sky, swaying out endless brilliance, making many people lose their voices and panic. The two top immortal kings joined. Lu Qingyu, who was already in critical condition, was instantly forced to the edge of the cliff. If you are not careful, you may be quickly suppressed. Can't wait any longer. Lu Qingyu gritted his teeth and sneered, if I go back with you, will you let me go? Although, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain left him alone, which made him very jealous, but he understood that if he returned to the Lu clan, he would probably face a dead end. But to find the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, and may make a comeback. Faced with these two choices, it is not difficult for him to judge which path he should take. Bang! Lu Qingyu formed a seal with his hands, and blood bloomed on his body. It was very blazing, and his whole person was enveloped, reflecting the heaven and earth in blood red. This is a secret method. Although it cannot increase strength, it can increase speed. When used now, it is obviously gotta run for my life. Keep him! The seventh patriarch shouted. He wanted to intercept, but was a step too late. Today's matter is not over yet. Lu Qingyu, will be back sooner or later. Lu Qingyu glanced at Taishu with hatred, and then no longer missed him. He turned into a cloud of blood, soared into the sky, and entered the chaos in the blink of an eye. Just when he was about to leave the Sumeru realm. Bang! There was an explosion. He flew back again at a faster speed. Seeing this scene, Taishu and others looked at each other with weird expressions. They were confused for a while and didn't even know what happened. Why? Seeing that Lu Qingyu, who had left, suddenly came back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 604. Puff. Lu Qingyu's body trembled violently. He opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of blood while he was in mid-air, dyeing the starry sky red. He looked at the space in the distance in disbelief, his eyes widening, as if he had discovered something unusual, which made him angry. Very. Almost. In the blink of an eye, he could escape. But at the critical moment, he was blocked by others. Others may not know what happened, but he knew it clearly. Before he could escape on the way, it is clear that there is a formation, not a killing formation, but a trapping formation. Who arranged this? And when was it arranged? Why didn't it happen when the Lord of Tianmang Mountain left just now? Suddenly there is an extra trap formation? This is simply unbelievable. Lu Qingyu, it seems that heaven doesn't want to let you go either. Lu Qingzi sneered. He felt extremely happy. Although he didn't know what happened yet, because everything happened too fast just now. In just a blink of an eye, Lu Qingyu was bounced back, as if he had touched the formation. Or like he met some supreme figure. He couldn't figure it out in a short time. He simply stopped thinking about it. As long as Lu Qingyu is caught, everything will be easy. At the very least, the Lu family can recover from the turmoil in the underworld. After picking himself out, as for the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, what does he have to do with the Lu family? As long as today's news is released, all the strong men in the world will surround him. No matter how powerful he is, it will be useless. He can fight 1 against 2, or even 1 against 3, is it possible that he can also fight 1 against 10? It is estimated that it won't be long before the Lord of Tianmang Mountain will fall sadly. Now that this matter is over, Qingyu, it's time for you to follow us back to the God realm. The 7th ancestor also walked up, with an old face and cloudy eyes. He glanced at Lu Qingyu, with a hint of sadness deep in his eyes. Snort. Lu Qingyu snorted coldly. He ignored the 7th ancestor and others, but looked up at the sky and said in a cold voice, "Who are you? You hide your head and show your tail, don't you dare to show up." For the 7th patriarch and others. He obviously hates the people who secretly block him. If there were no people secretly, he would have left Sumeru realm by now. As long as he leaves here, others will not be able to catch up. Given time. He is another good man. But he was blocked at the last moment, and everything turned into a mirror. He could almost guess his next fate with his toes. It would definitely be very miserable. Even if he abolished his cultivation, it would be an easy task. I have been here a long time ago, but you never noticed it? A voice of righteous words came out of the void. A moment later, Meng Qingzi, dressed in black robes, with his hands on his back, his hair disheveled, and accompanied by overwhelming demonic aura, strode down from the sky. Every step you take is accompanied by the harmony of heaven and earth, as if the law of heaven is moving to it, which is extremely magical. The remnants of the underworld must be punished by everyone. You are unlucky to meet me today. If it weren't for the fact that you are a member of the Lu clan, I would definitely kill you here with my own hands. Meng Qingzi, a million years later, said as he walked. His voice was sonorous and powerful. If it weren't for the overwhelming demonic energy in his body, anyone who heard it would probably think that this was a pillar of the righteous path, not a giant of the demonic path. Fellow Daoist Meng. Taishu looked at the person who suddenly appeared. For a moment, he couldn't recover. If he remembered correctly, shouldn't this person be in the realm of the Great Emperor? Although the Great Emperor is the pinnacle of humanity, there is still a long way to go before he reaches the immortal realm. We have a long way to go. The last time I saw him, he had not long since become emperor. Why did he suddenly become an immortal king? Moreover, from the perspective of cultivation and aura, he did not seem to be much weaker than himself. This was too magical. From the great emperor to the immortal king, people in any world have to go through millions of years of hard training. If they are not lucky or have poor qualifications, there are many people who will not be able to become an immortal king even in their lifetime. And Meng Qingzi. But he suddenly transformed into a real immortal king, which made him extremely confused no matter how he looked at it. My dear, Meng Qingzi, has met several fellow Taoists. Mengqingzi covered his body with demonic energy, shrouded his whole body, and gave a slight salute. This move invisibly made everyone feel better. After all, it is rare to see such a polite demonic people. Especially at the last moment. And helped them block Lu Qingyu. It also raised the friendship level in their hearts to a big level. Among them, Taishu was the most moved. Last time, fellow Daoist men traveled hundreds of millions of miles and crossed the purple mystic realm alone to the Xianguang realm. With the strength of a mere emperor, he helped them reverse the situation. This time, he did not know what means he used, and suddenly became an immortal king, and came all the way to help them. This ancient way is heartwarming. Taishu asked himself, I am afraid that he is a person of the right way. Not many can do it. I've been waiting for you to meet fellow Taoist. The three kings of the Lu family did not dare to drag De Dao off, so they also returned the gift. Those who provided help in times of crisis at the critical moment deserved their gift. Fellow Taoist, your cultivation level. Taishu couldn't help but be curious and asked. Fellow Taoist Taishu, have you forgotten the Tianji Tower? Mengqingzi smiled mysteriously and said. Tianji Tower. Taishu took a breath of cold air and looked Mengqingzi up and down, with horror deep in his eyes. Senior Tianji building master, how could he have such a terrifying method? He could forcefully raise a person whose strength was only that of a great emperor to an immortal king realm. This is too unbelievable. If this is really the case, doesn't it mean that the senior Tianji building master has the ability to mass-produce immortal kings? Of course. The reason why he thinks so is because Mengqingzi is enveloped in demonic energy throughout their body. They could not see the suppressive power of heaven on Mengqingzi. Moreover, they did not take action, and they could not detect that Mengqingzi was not a genuine immortal king at all. At least in the current time and space, his immortal king strength had a lot of moisture. And this point is exactly what Mengqingzi needs. If he can avoid taking action, he will never take action, lest he lose all his trump cards. It is precisely because of this point that it gives Taishu and others a sense of unknown severity. After all, Mengqingzi brought out all the senior Tianji building masters, how could they not believe it? The four words Tianji building master have become a golden sign. Anything that is incomprehensible is placed on the Tianji building, and everything seems to go so naturally. I see. Taishu let out a long breath and murmured, if the senior Tianji building master took action, this matter would make sense. It must be the senior Tianji building master. He figured that we would fall short, so he sent fellow Taoists here. Help. Mengqingzi smiled and said nothing. Well, what you said is right. At this time, what he likes most is that the other party helps him find reasons. Taishu and others have all come up with reasons for him. This is no better than explaining it himself. Much more convenient. Unexpectedly, the senior Tianji building master actually did not want to see the rise of the underworld. Taishu shook his head slightly and said with some emotion, at the beginning, I was a little dissatisfied because my senior sold information to everyone in the underworld, but now that I think about it, I really shouldn't have. Besides, the three kings of the Lu clan looked at each other, confused. What did the two of them say again? Why can't we understand? This is not the first time they have heard the words Tianji Lozhu, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain before. I had mentioned it before, but the war situation was urgent at that time. So I couldn't ask further. Today I heard two people mention it again. From the few words, they immediately felt that the four words Tianji building master were covered with a mysterious veil. Even the immortal king can be cultivated at will. Is this something ordinary people can do? At least he has to be a quasi-immortal emperor to have this strength, right? It's not good. The quasi-immortal emperor is not so scary. Dare I ask these two fellow Taoists, who is this master of Tianji Tower? The seventh patriarch asked with his hands raised. In his opinion, Such a powerful and terrifying figure was very likely to have been extremely generous during the war in the underworld. If these two people can provide some information, maybe he can still. What did you think of? After all, the Liu clan also participated in the war. What if the Liu clan, a certain immortal king, and the mysterious Tianji building owner had some kind of friendship? The senior master of Tianji is mysterious and unpredictable. In today's world, no one knows where he comes from, let alone how terrifying his strength is. The only thing that is exposed to all living beings is his ability to deduce the secrets of heaven. Taishu said slowly. There was a feeling of admiration in his voice that could not be concealed. Deducing the secret. The seventh ancestor was stunned for a moment, thinking quickly in his mind about matching ancient figures. In a short period of time, several figures flashed through his mind, but he eliminated them one by one. As far as he knew, those people have all been counterattacked by the secrets of heaven, and eventually fell. After all, even an immortal king who keeps leaking the secrets of heaven will be punished by heaven. Shouldn't it? The seventh patriarch's body was shaken and he murmured, a certain senior did not die, but secretly left the original world and came here to meditate. I have to say that this possibility is not small. But if you want to verify it, you have to take a look at Tianji Tower in person. It seems that this time, Senior Tianji building master also helped us a lot secretly. Lu Suanquan's face was extremely pale. He had just been beaten several times and was almost forced to self-destruct. His foundation was already injured, but fortunately, the injury was suppressed. At least, there is nothing serious at the moment. He looked at Taishu, then at Meng Qingzi, and said thankfully both of them have received guidance from the master of Tianji. If they hadn't acted righteously, I really can't imagine what would have happened in the end. This is all our responsibility. If we let the underworld do nothing, I am afraid there will be endless disasters. It is also a good thing to get rid of it today. Meng Qingzi's face was solemn, and his voice had a hint of regret as he said, it's a pity that the Lord of Tianmang Mountain ran away, alas. Taishu glanced at Meng Qingzi strangely, and intuitively told him that Meng Qingzi's words were a bit strange, and it was not like he could say it. However, it was a fact that he helped him twice. Is it possible? Did I misjudge Meng Qingzi before? In fact, he is really a warm-hearted person who thinks about all the world. Taishu felt a little guilty, but he didn't expect that he had made a mistake before. He bowed his hands to Meng Qingzi again and said, fellow Daoist Meng, there is no need to worry about it. The Lord of Mang Mountain that day was not an easy person. He ran away today. After today, he will be the only one left, and it will be difficult to make any big waves. Yes. The seventh patriarch also nodded. He took a deep look at Meng Qingzi. Although it was his first meeting, the other party already gave him a feeling of sympathy. Why wasn't he the same way at the beginning? The underworld swept through the heavens, and he didn't say anything. Said that, he joined the army resisting the underworld. Times have changed. Today, I saw the shadow of myself in a younger generation. They are all so passionate. The only difference is that this person is practicing magic skills. Yes. However, he is not a pedantic person. The reason why the devil is never because of the skills, but because of the people. As long as you are an upright person, so what if you practice magic? There are no hypocrites in the righteous way. So these two in comparison. Meng Qingzi's image suddenly became a bit taller. After we return to the God realm, we will naturally spread today's events to various forces. It is estimated that it will not be long before the supreme power comes to remove the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. The seventh ancestor said in a deep voice. In this case, there will be a lot of work. Meng Qingzi bowed his hand. This is what should be done. The seventh ancestor returned the salute. He glanced at Lu Qingyu next to him, raised his hand and said to the two of them, it's getting late. Now that we have captured the traitor of the Lu family, we won't stay any longer. Meng Qingzi raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, you three are leaving. Fellow Daoist Meng, is there something else? The seventh patriarch asked in confusion. Without, fine. Meng Qingzi coughed lightly to cover up his embarrassment. He mused, I'm not sorry for Meng Lang, but I'm worried about my three fellow Taoists. After all, you have been severely injured. The road to the God realm is extremely long. In addition, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain has left. I am worried that some accidents will happen on the way. Not as good as. How about the three of you recuperating here for the time being? This. When the seventh patriarch heard this, he looked a little hesitant. Have to say, Meng Qingzi's worry was justified. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain escaped, but to be honest, he was not seriously injured and recovered after a while. On the other hand, the three of them. He was slightly injured, Lu Qinzi was seriously injured, and Lu Xiancheng was the worst, having lost the strength to fight. Such a combination really doesn't have much chance of winning against the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. Not good. One or two more will die. After all, with Lu Qingyu in their hands, who can guarantee that the Lord of Tianmang Mountain will not come to rob him on the way? As for asking Meng Qingzi to escort them back, there is no need to consider it. They have already helped me a lot, so let others escort them. It doesn't make sense anyway. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 605. Whatever. The seventh patriarch thought for a long time. He glanced at Lu Xiancheng helplessly, sighed, and said, after the three of us regained some strength, we made plans. I would like to ask two fellow Taoists to help protect the Dharma. This is necessary. Before Taisha responded, Meng Qingzi spoke first with a smile on his face. Such a show of eagerness for justice and justice. Immediately, the favorability of the people of the Lu family rose to another level. This time, the Sumeru realm and his party did not lose. Not only did they suppress the traitors of the Lu family, but they also got to know such a pillar of righteousness who lived in darkness and had a bright heart, which made them feel relieved. If there were so many people like this, why worry about the immortality of the underworld? Three fellow Taoists, just rest assured and recover from your injuries. Taishu also responded. I'm tired. The seventh patriarch and the other three nodded slightly. They did not leave too far away. Instead, they set up a spirit gathering array not far away, absorbing the spiritual energy from a million miles around and gathering it together. The three of them each swallowed one. After taking the elixir, he sat cross-legged in the middle of the formation and quickly recovered from his injuries. Seeing that the three of them had entered samadhi, Meng Qingzi was standing aside. He glanced at Lu Qingyu inadvertently, and then looked at Taishu. He found that Taishu, after not noticing himself, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. According to his memory from a million years ago, Lu Qingyu carries the inheritance of the underworld, and he also has the inheritance of the Lu family. Both things are of extraordinary value. Needless to say, the inheritance of the underworld. It was left by an immortal emperor and its value is immeasurable. The inheritance of the Lu family is not trivial. After all, they have once been glorious. Now they are not as good as they were back then, but they are still huge. He has trained several immortal kings alone. If he can fall into his hands, wouldn't it save him a lot of detours? The reason why he spent millions of years to become an immortal king is that, don't you have the skills to become an immortal king? If you have it now, wouldn't it mean that you don't need a million years to become an immortal king? Hundreds of thousands of years as an immortal king. That's simply unimaginable. Heavens, the most amazing and talented people in the world are probably practicing at this speed. Of course, the top protagonists of destiny are not included. The cultivation speed of the children of destiny cannot be measured by common sense. The achievements of hundreds of years are enough to offset the results of hundreds of thousands or even hundreds of years of others. There is no comparison between the two. Mengqingzi is still very clear about his own position. As long as he relies on Tianji Tower, he can compete with some top geniuses. It looked fine. Thinking of this, Mengqingzi rolled his eyes and immediately thought about it. He took 2 steps forward, walked to Taishu, smiled, and said, "Fellow Taoist also experienced a battle just now, don't you need to recover? I'm here to watch. It doesn't matter if you Taoist friends go to practice first." When Taishu heard this, he glanced at Mengqingzi and responded softly, "We just fought. I was not injured, so I don't need to recover. I'm sorry, fellow Taoist, I'm sorry." Moreover, he looked at Lu Qingyu next to him and said in a deep voice, "This person has joined the underworld. His methods are secretive. I'm afraid I won't be able to catch him by myself." Well. The expression on Mengqingzi's face was frozen. This is embarrassing. It's too early to be too cautious. Can't you just practice hard? Now you stay here, making it very difficult for me. Fellow Taoist Master Taishu's worries coincide with mine. Mengqingzi laughed dryly. He looked at Lu Qingyu with a pair of eyes, and said tentatively, "If you and I join forces, there will be no chance for this beast to escape. Since it is impossible for him to escape, how about we torture him while the 3 Taoist friends of the Lu family are recovering? It would be nice to know where the Lord of Tianmang Mountain is hiding." Being stared at by Mengqingzi, Lu Qingyu shuddered inadvertently. He held his neck, looked at Mengqingzi without flinching, and said in a cold voice, "You dare? Hey." Mengqingzi laughed strangely and said, "Why don't I dare? Have you never seen the method of searching for souls in the devil's way? That's not right." Taishu frowned, looked at Mengqingzi, and said slowly, "Lu Qingyu is a member of the Lu clan after all. Even though he has betrayed us, we tortured him without permission, and we are slightly suspected of overstepping his bounds. If the 3 fellow Taoists wake up and find out about this, I'm afraid they will be unhappy. Fellow Taoist is too pedantic." Mengqingzi curled his lips. Everything was good in Taishu, but it was this rigid character that made him particularly unhappy, even if the other party had become the immortal king. To be honest, Mengqingzi did not regard the other party as an enemy. Because, if he wanted to, it is too easy to deal with such people. The underworld is the enemy of all heavens and realms. If Lu Qingyu betrayed the Lu family for other reasons, we naturally have no right to interfere. But talk about this. Mengqingzi paused for a moment, his tone became a bit heavier, and he said slowly, "Lu Qingyu has joined the underworld, and that is not just a matter of the Lu family. Every cultivator in our world has a responsibility. Now I am interrogating the Lord of Tianmang Mountain for the sake of the safety of the world. To know. The mainstream of Tianmang Mountain is scurrying outside. Every day, the danger becomes greater. With his strength, if he goes crazy, he can completely destroy countless small worlds. Fellow Taoist Taishu, you must not harm hundreds of millions of innocent people for the sake of your own benevolence." As soon as these words came out, Taishu was completely speechless. He knew very well the strength of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. If this person hides in the chaos, he can indeed destroy countless small worlds, such as the previous Tianyuan world. In this way, in the eyes of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, the world is no different from an ant. If the opponent really relies on the blood of living creatures to recover his cultivation, in one day, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain can wipe out hundreds of millions of people. Taishu was speechless. Fellow Taoist Taishu, you should know that what I practice is the magic method. If you can't bear it, you might as well let me ask you alone. You just need to protect the Dharma here. Mengqingzi said boldly. He has the courage to bear the responsibility alone if something happens. And the meaning of his question. Taishu also knew it well. It was nothing more than some insidious means. After all, Menkingzi practiced the demonic skills. Fa, what question does he want to torture? Can he still use the gentle method of Gendeo? Thinking with his toes, it is simply impossible. The reason why Taishu is not allowed to come together, in Taishu's view, the other party should be thinking about himself, for fear of a man of the right path, will not be able to see it. All right. After thinking for a long time, Taishu nodded helplessly. He was not unaware of the threat of the underworld. Instead of wasting time, it would be better to let Menkingzi use his own method. As long as no one is killed. Wait until the three kings of the Lu family wake up. There was an explanation. When Menkingzi heard the words, a smile flashed across his face. He grabbed Lu Qingyu with one hand and walked away. As he walked, he said, I will take him somewhere else to avoid staining the eyes of fellow Taoists. Taishu pursed his lips and wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't say it. Soon, Menkingzi and Lu Qingyu disappeared from his sight. But if you use your spiritual sense to observe, you can still see that Menkingzi and Lu Qingyu didn't leave far, he just stayed 50,000 miles away. For an immortal king, this distance is almost nothing. With just a thought, he can quickly come over. When he arrived on a mound, Menkingzi took a look around and set up a phantom formation with a wave of his sleeves. From the outside, it seemed that he was interrogating Lu Qingyu, but when he walked into the formation, he would find that everything was completely different. You are indeed not what you showed just now. Lu Qingyu was thrown to the ground, but he was not angry, but had a sneer on his lips, as if he had discovered something extraordinary. You and I are the same kind of people. Lu Qingyu said firmly. Oh. Menkingzi turned around, looking at Lu Qingyu with a calm look, and said, why do you see it? You have had evil intentions from the beginning. You can deceive the three kings of the Lu family and the Taishu immortal king, but you can't hide it from me. Lu Qingyu's eyes flickered, and there was a deep hidden murderous intention in his eyes. The person in front of him cut off his own way of life. He said that he didn't hate it. That was impossible, but at the moment, the other party held his only chance of survival. He can lower his dignity and beg Menkingzi to show his respect. As long as Menkingzi is willing, he can leave calmly at any time. Even if Taishu and others stop him, it will be too late. If my guess is correct, you should come here for the inheritance of the underworld, right? Lu Qingyu struggled to stand up, glanced in the direction of Tianyuan realm, and said with a slight smile, from what I just said, we can know that your strength was obtained from Tianji Tower. Estimate. Master Tianji gave you such a powerful strength, and it shouldn't be in vain. You have to pay a huge price at least. If you can't gain something, don't you have to return empty-handed? Therefore, I can conclude that you must have some plan to make up for your efforts in Tianji Tower, and what you said is your plan is the inheritance of the underworld. Said the last word. Lu Qingyu was already convinced. It was as if he had seen all the transactions Menkingzi had done in Tianji Tower. You are very smart. Menkingzi chuckled. Ah. Lu Qingyu smiled disdainfully and sneered, I have been to Tianji Tower before. I know the horror of the owner of Tianji Tower, and I also know how difficult it is to get benefits from Tianji Tower. In this world, there may be people who give for nothing and do not care about the gains. And you? Not this kind of person. How about it? Lu Qingyu smiled with a sure victory and said in a strange voice, do you want us to make a deal? I'll give you the inheritance from the underworld, but you let me live. I can promise you that what happened today will be forgotten from now on. Very good proposal. Meng Qingzi said slowly. Did you agree? Lu Qingyu immediately became energetic after hearing this. He stood up suddenly and said quickly, then help me unlock the seal quickly, and I will pass on the inheritance of the underworld to you. While speaking, a cold light flashed in his eyes. As long as he can leave. There are many ways in the future to slowly deal with this person. His immortal king's strength is like the moon in the mirror, but his own strength is real. Kill him, only one thought is enough. Not urgent. Meng Qingzi waved his hand. Lu Qingyu looked ugly and said in a deep voice, you want to regret it. I never agreed, so why should I regret it? Meng Qingzi said jokingly. You fool me. Lu Qingyu was extremely angry. He had traveled across all realms for countless years, and this was the first time he stumbled in front of a junior. This made him extremely angry. If his strength had not been sealed, he would have killed him here immediately. Haha, I don't need to say anything about your current situation. As long as I have a thought, you will die without a burial place. Do I still need to play tricks on you? Meng Qing released a ray of breath, and the oppressive void was distorted. The years around him were surging, triggering thousands of laws of heaven, which was very terrifying. What you up to? Searching for souls. Lu Qingyu's face turned pale, and he took a few steps back. He had his soul searched by the Lord of Tianmang Mountain before, and he didn't want to experience it again. If he keeps being searched for his soul, does he still need the face of the immortal king? Make trouble? Not good. It will leave a shadow and create inner demons. If you want to go further in the future, it will probably be extremely difficult. I don't mind searching for souls. After all, you know that I'm not a good person. With a kind smile on his face, Meng Qingzi said slowly, if you actively cooperate, you might be able to escape. This smile fell into Lu Qingyu's eyes, no less than a devil's smile, making him shudder uncontrollably. Good. Lu Qingyu gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, I will hand over the inheritance of the underworld to you, but I hope you can keep your promise and let me live. You first give me the inheritance of the underworld. Meng Qingzi stretched out one hand, holding a jade slip in his palm, handed it to Lu Qingyu, and said slowly, don't try to lie to me, I have a way to prove that what you said is true or false. Don't forget, there is still Senior Tianji host in this world. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 606. The jade slip was handed over. Meng Qingzi easily unlocked part of the seal, allowing Lu Qingyu to record the inheritance of the underworld into the jade slips. With the strength of the immortal king, he is not worried, the other party can run away. After all, not only is he here alone, there are also Taishu and the three kings of the Lu family nearby. In addition to the previous formation, not to mention Lu Qingyu, who has been seriously injured. Even if the opponent is intact and at his peak, he still cannot escape. Tianji landlord. Lu Qingyu looked ugly. The other party mentioned the owner of Tianji, and his intention was self-evident. It must be that he got some news in the Tianji tower, and he deliberately brought it up at this moment, just to use the name of the owner of the Tianji tower to suppress him. No matter how many tricks he has in mind, he would never dare to use tricks in front of the master of Tianji. And when Meng Qingzi left Tianji tower, would he have asked the senior owner of Tianji tower how things would develop next? The current situation. Could it be that the senior Tianji building master had told Meng Qingzi a long time ago? Even the things he passed on to the other party's underworld were all expected by the senior Tianji building master, and he told Meng Qingzi everything in detail? The thought of this. Lu Qingyu suddenly broke out in a layer of cold sweat. He raised his head and glanced at Meng Qingzi, who was not in a hurry at the moment and looked at him with a sneer at the corner of his mouth. This made his hair stand on end even more. Just like everything is under Meng Qingzi's control. This moment. Lu Qingyu confirmed that Meng Qingzi must have learned everything in Tianji Tower, otherwise, how could he be so calm? Thinking you understand the cause and effect. Lu Qingyu gritted his teeth. He took the jade slip and carved all the inheritance of the underworld that he knew into the jade slip without any reservation. Compared with inheritance from the underworld, one's own life is more important. He didn't want to ruin his future because of his temporary cleverness. This is the inheritance from the underworld that you want. You should know that I only have part of it in my hand, and now it's all inside. Lu Qingyu handed the jade slip back. He looked at Meng Qingzi deeply and pointed out, before you look at the jade slip, there is still room for everything. Once you look at the content of this jade slip, I'm afraid it is. There is no place for you to hide in all the worlds. These words have deep meaning. But the meaning is not difficult to understand. As long as Meng Qingzi has read the inheritance of the underworld, everyone in the world will acquiesce that Meng Qingzi joined the underworld. After all, he already has the inheritance of the underworld. No one it can be guaranteed that the other party will not practice. Just in case, the best way is to suppress him. As for Meng Qingzi, in Lu Qingyu's view, he has cut off his own path. Both of them carry the inheritance of the underworld, that is grasshoppers on the same line. As allies. At this time, shouldn't it be natural to help brothers? You don't have to worry about it. Meng Qingzi didn't care. He took the jade slip, took a look at the contents, and quickly recorded it in his mind. Then he took out a blank jade slip and handed it to Lu Qingyu. I'm also curious about the exercises you practiced before. Can you hand them over so that I can refer to them? Lu Qingyu's eyes fixed, his face turned cold, and he said in a cold voice, you want to plot the Lu clan's martial arts. You have betrayed the Lu clan, so there is no need to keep it secret now. Meng Qingzi said with a smile. Your appetite is too big, be careful to push yourself to death. If the Lu family's skills fall into the hands of outsiders, your end will probably be extremely miserable. Lu Qingyu said in a cold voice. No family would allow their clan-suppressing skills to be obtained by outsiders. If Lu Qingyu had not betrayed, Meng Qingzi would not have dared to make any plans, but fortunately Lu Qingyu had betrayed the Lu clan. Such a move, come on. It's easy to get the Lu clan's skills from him. In the future, leave it to yourself now. With the Lu clan's skills and the inheritance of the underworld, comparing the two, it's no better than touching it yourself. How much better is it to cross a river by holding onto stones? You don't need to worry about this. Meng Qingzi said casually. In a word, do you pay or not? Why not hand it over? Lu Qingyu said indifferently. He readily engraved the Lu clan's skills into the jade slip. Of course. The skills he left behind were not those he practiced by himself. They were the skills practiced by Lu Xiancheng. Method. Among the Lu clan, there are not a few techniques that can be called Zhen clan. After all, many immortal kings were born in their history. And the techniques Lu Xiancheng practiced were left behind by a certain ancestor. Lu Qingyu has also observed it, but he has not practiced it. Today, it is most appropriate to give it to Meng Qingzi. In this way, it means that he also has a handle on Meng Qingzi. If the other party does not let him go, he can completely give it to Meng Qingzi afterwards. If you tell the seventh patriarch and the three of you, no matter whether they believe it or not, they will all have a grudge. When the day comes when Meng Qingzi uses the magical power of the Lu family, his end will come. Even if he doesn't expose the Lu family's skills, there are traces of it, but there is also the inheritance of the underworld. If any one of the two inheritances is taken out, Meng Qingzi can be put to death. He who knows the current affairs is a hero. Meng Qingzi smiled brightly. He took a look at the contents of the jade slip, and his heart was filled with joy. Before coming here, he did not expect that he would gain so much. But after his performance, not only did he get I didn't have the inheritance of the underworld, but I got the inheritance of the Lu family. This is simply incredible. I've given you everything you want. When will you let me go? Lu Qingyu said eagerly. The inheritance of the underworld was given to him, and the skills of the Lu family were also given to him. If Meng Qingzi doesn't let him go, it won't be long before the three kings of the Lu family wake up. After all, the seventh ancestor's injuries are not serious. It will all be restored soon. When he wakes up, he wants to leave, which is almost impossible. When did I promise to let you go? Meng Qingzi put away the two jade slips, looked at Lu Qingyu jokingly, and said lightly. You. Lu Qingyu's eyes narrowed, and the anger in his chest rose. He said in a cold voice, you want to break your promise. Have you forgotten? Meng Qingzi said in a leisurely manner, you just said that we are the same kind of people, so you should understand that people like us never keep our word when we speak. After all, I didn't swear to heaven. You deserve to die. Lu Qingyu struggled to get up and rushed towards Meng Qingzi. If his cultivation was still there, he would have killed him here immediately. Unfortunately, his cultivation has been completely sealed. He just took 2 steps forward and was killed. Meng Qingzi gently turned back his sleeves and swept them away. Bang! Lu Qingyu hit a raised boulder, smashing it into a piece of powder. He was very embarrassed. He half knelt in the gravel, his body trembling slightly. There was anger, resentment, and boundless killing intent. I never thought that one day I would be played by someone. You know, he was always playing tricks on others. How could anyone dare to speak rudely to him? I remember what happened today. Don't let me escape one day, otherwise, I will definitely let you live and die. Lu Qingyu spoke in a cold voice. The voice seemed to come from the 9 nether hell and penetrated into the bone marrow, causing the temperature of this world to drop a lot. If it were before, you might be able to leave, but this time, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Meng Qingzi chuckled. In the last life, Lu Qingyu did run away. Moreover, he joined forces with the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and caused a big disturbance. At that time, his strength was too low and he did not participate. He only found out afterwards that through this, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain became the quasi-immortal emperor. With the strength of the quasi-immortal emperor, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain directly penetrated the entire God realm. When he knew it, everything had happened and he could not change anything. But this time, without Lu Qingyu, he was very curious, would the Lord of Tianmang Mountain become a quasi-immortal emperor again? Logically speaking, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain becoming a quasi-immortal emperor was the correct direction of history. If it was because he caused history to change, and the Lord of Tianmang Mountain did not become a quasi-immortal emperor, then his cause and effect was huge. A quasi-immortal emperor suddenly disappeared from history, and he was supposed to fall at the hands of the master of Tianmang Mountain. The people in the world did not perish, but survived. The entire time and space will probably take a completely new trajectory. And after returning to my own time and space, the power of divine punishment that I will have to bear, just thinking about it, is chilling. Or. Meng Qingzi frowned, glanced at Lu Qingyu, and thought in his mind, let him go. If Lu Qingyu is let go, history may change slightly, but overall it should not change much. But this way, then I would be in danger in this time and space. With Lu Qingyu's temper, there is definitely nothing he can do, but what about himself who only has the strength of the great emperor? I am dead now. That future self is also destined to disappear into thin air. It seems that we can't let him go. Meng Qingzi struggled for a moment, then he made up his mind, turned around, and walked towards the outside of the formation. His purpose had been accomplished. There was no point in staying here. Anyway, it won't take long for Taishu and others to, after discovering an abnormality, when they come over, they will definitely find Lu Qingyu whose strength has been sealed. As for whether Lu Qingyu will escape, he has not thought about it. Because it is simply impossible. Correct. Meng. King Zi, who was leaving, suddenly stopped and walked up to Lu Qingyu. He smiled and said, I almost forgot something. As he said that, he raised his palm and moved it towards the top of Lu Qingyu's head, covering it. You. What are you up to? Lu Qingyu shouted. His intuition told him that Meng Qingzi was going to be harmful to him. This scene was really like the scene when the Lord of Tianmang Mountain searched for his soul. Could it be that he doesn't believe what I just handed over and wants to search my soul to confirm? Just a moment. A look of humiliation flashed across Lu Qingyu's face. But it didn't take long. Meng Qingzi retracted his palm, and Lu Qingyu slowly opened his eyes. A trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. He looked at Meng Qingzi and then at the surrounding scenery. My mind is filled with chaos. He didn't know why he ended up in this situation. He only remembered that he was fighting Lu Qingzi, and after being stunned for a moment, he arrived here. It seemed that there was something missing in the middle, but he couldn't remember it no matter what. You deleted my memory. Although Lu Qingyu has forgotten what happened just now, looking at his fate and Meng Qingzi's actions, it is not difficult for him to guess what he has experienced. You have a special status, I can't kill you, but I can't leave any hidden dangers, so this is the best choice. Meng Qingzi said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left, raising his steps. The void rippled in front of him, and a space crack opened. He stepped into it, and soon his figure disappeared. Can't kill me? But we can't leave any hidden dangers. Lu Qingyu was stunned and murmured to himself. What do these words mean? He deleted my memory. Something must have happened in this memory. The reason why I ended up in this situation must be related to that person just now. Lu Qingyu quickly calmed down and began to analyze the current situation. He found that his cultivation was sealed. At this moment, he was in an illusion formation. Looking at the surrounding environment, it should still be the ancestral land of the Lu family, but it was not clear. How is the Lord of Tianmang Mountain doing now? I don't know what is happening to the three kings of the Lu family. Hopefully it's not the worst case scenario. Lu Qingyu's eyes flashed, and he kept thinking about how to escape, but after thinking for a long time, he had no clue. Just when he was confused, a figure in white strode in. Taishu, when he saw that Lu Qingyu was the only one here, his heart suddenly sank and he quickly asked. Where is fellow deist Meng? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 607. Fellow deist Meng. What fellow deist Meng? Lu Qingyu looked ugly. He suddenly thought of the person who just left. He suddenly raised his head and said in a deep voice, you mean the person just now? Taishu looked at Lu Qingyu's expression, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. This performance of the other party made him extremely surprised. Logically speaking, Lu Qingyu did not shy away from the conversation between the few people just now. He should have heard everything, even if he didn't know everything about Meng Qingzi. Name. You should also know who the deist Meng you are talking about is, right? But now, Lu Qingyu suddenly didn't know. This is very unreasonable. Could it be that the methods used by fellow deist Meng were too cruel and vicious, causing Lu Qingyu's memory to become confused? Taishu glanced around blankly and found no sign of Meng Qingzi. He asked again, where did the person who asked you just now go? And what's going on with this phantom formation? It was precisely because of the existence of the illusory formation that Taishu didn't notice anything was wrong. Now that he was walking into the formation, everything was different from what he thought. For no reason, he had a bad premonition in his heart. Lu Qingyu is still there, but why is Meng Qingzi missing? What on earth did he do to make him leave without saying goodbye? That person just now. Thinking of the back of the person who left just now, Lu Qingyu's eyes suddenly turned cold. Although he had no memory, he could still imagine it with his toes. What the other person did? It's definitely not a good thing. Otherwise, why would you erase your memory? A dignified immortal king had his memory wiped out abruptly. This feeling was definitely unpleasant. His eyes were cold, looking at the direction Meng Qingzi left, and said lightly, "Things have reached this point. Don't you still understand everything?" Lu Qingyu is not stupid. The moment he saw Taishu, he was already sure that the lord of Tianmang Mountain had probably escaped, and although the three kings of the Lu family didn't know it themselves, they were probably not in serious trouble. In other words, he was the only one. One person has become a prisoner. At this time, if you don't think of a way to cause some trouble to Taishu and others, then you may never get ahead. After all, joining the underworld is a crime that will never be reincarnated in the god realm. Once taken away, if you go back, everything will be over. The best way is to make the other party unable to go back and stay here because of something. In this way, he will have room for maneuver. Clear what? Taishu shouted coldly. Ah! Lu Qingyu sat cross-legged on the spot, glanced at Taishu indifferently, smiled disdainfully, and said, "It seems that you still don't know what the real thought of that person just now is. He is different from you. From the beginning, he came here for the inheritance in my hands. Although he is not sure what he has experienced just now. But this does not prevent him from pouring the dirty water of the inheritance of the underworld on Meng Qingzi's head, because in this way, it will definitely divert the attention of Taishu and others. The inheritance in your hands. Inheritance from the underworld." Taishu's heart felt heavy. He was a little unwilling to believe all this. After all, Meng Qingzi had performed perfectly just now, like a pillar of the righteous path. How could it be possible? In the blink of an eye, it turned into a conspiracy that used all possible means. Not only the inheritance of the underworld, but also the inheritance of all the Lu family. Lu Qingyu just broke the jar and threw it. The dirty water has already been poured out anyway. It doesn't matter if you pour a little more. He might as well drag the Lu family into the water. What he doesn't know is that everything he said now is different from what Meng Qingzi did just now. Because, invisibly, everything fits together. Impossible. Taishu pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "Fellow Daoist Meng is definitely not such a person. If he was not such a person, why did he leave suddenly? Why should we set up this illusion array? It's not just to deceive others." Lu Qingyu looked calm. Although his memory has been deleted, as long as it does not involve what happened just now, no one can tell that he has lost a memory. Now he is talking freely, and he seems to be very confident. Even Taishu was trapped in it for a while. In a dilemma, I don't know who to trust. Qingyu, you disappoint me so much. Just when Taishu was puzzled, the seventh patriarch walked over tremblingly with his hands behind his back. He glanced at Lu Qingyu and said confidently, "Fellow Daoist Meng is definitely not the kind of person you say. Although he and Meng Qingzi have not met many times, and they are not as close to each other as Taishu, but the few words just made him feel a sense of sympathy for each other. How could such a person join the underworld? How could he covet the Lu family? The inheritance of the martial arts of a clan? You know, Meng Qingzi is also an immortal king. At this point, to be honest, the martial arts of the Lu clan have little meaning to Meng Qingzi. If the Lu clan had been born quasi-immortal emperors, and maybe the seventh ancestor still believe that Meng Qingzi covets the inheritance of the Lu family, but the key point is that they don't have it. Everyone is an immortal king, and each has his own way to go. Even if he takes the Lu family's skills, for Meng Qingzi, it is only for reference, and it is impossible to change the practice. It is unrealistic to offend the Lu family for a practice that can only be used for reference. Menkingzi is an immortal king. How could you do such an unwise thing? Fellow Taoist, actually. Taisha spoke. He wanted to say that Menkingzi's strength was not necessarily real and might only last for a period of time. After all, it was easy for senior Tianji building master to make Menkingzi become the immortal king in a short period of time. If Menkingzi becomes a genuine immortal king, the price will be too high. Even if Menkingzi emptied his net worth, he would not be able to afford it. But before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the seventh patriarch. I know the right and wrong in my heart. My Taoist friend once said before that the senior Tianji building master can calculate everything. You only need to ask him and everything will be understood. The seventh ancestor waved his hand to stop Taishu's next words. Then he glared at Lu Qingyu and snorted coldly. Now that things have happened, do you still want to drag others into the water? One is a person who just helped them, and the other is a person who can even betray his clan members, and even colludes with the Lord of Tianmang Mountain to kill them all. Who should be believed and who should not be believed? It is self-evident. If they really believe Lu Qingyu, they are afraid that if this news spreads, people will laugh out loud. After all, they just helped them. If they turn around, the Lu family will have to deal with their benefactor. From now on, who dares to lend a helping hand to the Lu clan? Even if Menkingzi really took the Lu clan's skills, they can't make it public now. At least they can't take the initiative to take action against Menkingzi without evidence. Otherwise, this ungrateful person, once you have a reputation, it's not that easy to take it off. Things in the underworld are no small matter, and I don't think fellow Daoist Meng is the kind of person who doesn't care about the overall situation. I just don't know why he left without saying goodbye. Taishu sighed and said helplessly. Maybe. The seventh patriarch pondered for a moment and said softly, he must have his own considerations. That's probably it. Taishu nodded. No matter who they are, they don't want to believe that Menkingzi will covet the inheritance of the underworld, because in this way, the underworld will undoubtedly have an immortal king with fighting power. This is not a thing for all the worlds. Good thing. Just after suppressing Lu Qingyu, Menkingzi appeared. If this continues, how will we deal with the underworld? Who can guarantee that after suppressing the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, other giant immortal kings will appear? How is fellow Taoist's injury? Taishu asked. It's no longer a serious problem. The seventh ancestor waved his hand to indicate to the other party not to worry. His injury was not serious and he would recover soon. As for Lu Qinzi and Lu Xiancheng, I'm afraid it will take a while longer. That's good. Hearing that the seventh patriarch had recovered from his injuries, Taisha breathed a sigh of relief. With these two people here, they no longer need to worry about the Lord of Tianmang Mountain coming back. Today's events have been reported back to the Lu clan. Several immortal kings who have been training abroad will also return in the near future. When the time comes, we, the Lu clan, will give an explanation to all the heavens and worlds for this traitor. As for the matter of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, we, the Lu family, are equally responsible. The seventh ancestor said in a deep voice. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Taishu's eyes lit up and he said with a smile. With the Lu family's statement, the affairs of the underworld should be coming to an end. After all, the Lu family is so powerful and has such a profound foundation. It is simply impossible for a mere lord of Tianmang Mountain to do so. He is their opponent. As long as the lord of Tianmang Mountain is removed, the current few worlds can quietly cultivate for a period of time. It is estimated that in 10 years, the whole will undergo earth-shaking changes. The immortal king dare not say. In the end, at least there are more than 10 times as many monks in the immortal realm. It's just a matter of duty. The seventh patriarch said without caring. At the same time, Outside the boundary of Sumeru, a stream of light fell to the ground and transformed into two figures. Two Menkingzi stood on a mountain peak. A million years later, Menkingzi waved his sleeves and robes, setting up a restriction to block outside prying eyes. After he confirmed that everything was safe, he let out a long breath. How does that go? Menkingzi, whose strength was only that of the great emperor, asked impatiently as soon as he appeared. It has ended. A million years later, Menkingzi saw two jade slips in his hand. He placed them in his current hands and said, "This is the inheritance of the underworld and the Lu family. Before you, the immortal king, two inheritances are enough to make your future smooth. But you must remember not to use it lightly unless absolutely necessary." Meng. Kingzi raised his eyebrows, glanced at the two jade slips, then took a breath and said in disbelief, "Did you steal these two inheritances? Two inheritances that can become the immortal king are hot anywhere. Today, 1 million years later, I am all in the hands of one person." Even Menkingzi, who is so bold, is a little uneasy at the moment. Okay. Foresight. If this news spreads, I am afraid that I will die without a burial place. What do you mean stolen? Menkingzi, a million years later, frowned and said displeasedly, "I got it with difficulty with the help of senior Tianji building master and my own wisdom. Does this make any difference?" Menkingzi said helplessly. Each of these two skills counts as one. Even if he practices it, he cannot use it openly, because once used, there will be endless troubles. Let's not talk about the inheritance of the underworld. The Lu family alone, it's enough for him to drink a pot. Even if he becomes the immortal king, he will not feel any sense of security in his heart. Don't worry, no matter what happens, you can go to Tianji Tower. The senior owner of Tianji Tower can keep you safe and sound. Menkingzi, a million years later, gave this instruction, then looked at the sky and said softly, "That's all I've said. By the way, you yourself are the immortal king, why do you need to give me other people's skills?" Meng. Kingzi asked in confusion. "This is my own creation. It does not belong to this time and space and cannot be given to you. However, with the inheritance of the underworld and the inheritance of the Lu family, you can find a broader path in the future." Menkingzi, a million years later, said helplessly, "If I take out my skills, I am afraid it will cause chaos in this space and time. When the divine punishment comes, even I will not be able to withstand it." This. Menkingzi was speechless. He didn't expect that just one technique would cause such a big stir. "Even in this situation, I'm afraid it won't be too easy after I go back." Menkingzi, a million years later, laughed at himself and said helplessly. "Lu Qingyu, who should not have fallen in the first place, was suppressed because of him, and his mediocre self also received the inheritance of the underworld and the inheritance of the Lu family. In the future everything has been changed to a complete mess." At this moment, he himself began to feel a little scared. But it's all worth it. A million years later, Menkingzi let out a sigh of relief. He turned back and took a deep look at himself, then opened the space crack and stepped into the river of time. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 608. Etc. Menkingzi spoke again. But it was a step completed. A million years later, Menkingzi stepped into the river of time and quickly disappeared into it. Watching the other persons retreating back, Menkingzi let out a long sigh, feeling quite helpless. "I still have many questions that I haven't had time to ask. For example, what will be the fate of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain in the future? No matter how you put it, your future self has experienced more than 1 million years and knows a lot of things. If you can tell yourself a few things, wouldn't it be a waste of time to go to Tianji Tower? Even if you can't tell about big things, you can tell yourself about smaller things. You can definitely make a lot of money by relying on foresight. It's a pity that Menqingzi, a million years later, did not give him this opportunity. By the way, when I left this time and space a million years ago, I didn't seem to rely on the help of the senior Tianji poster. Menqingzi looked at the place where he left a million years later and fell into deep thought. He knows. There will never be a person like the immortal king in hundreds of millions of years. Although relatively rare, there are still many more than quasi-immortal emperors or immortal emperors. Such people are enough to cross the long river of time. But why? When the other party comes over, he needs the help of senior Tianji building master, but when he leaves, he doesn't need help. Menqingzi was puzzled. Could it be that he can't make it? Menqingzi's eyes lit up, as if he had grasped something important. It is very likely that in the near future, something big will happen, which will cause chaos in the long river of time, making it impossible for people in the future to come back. Only then can we explain it. But how big of an event can affect the long course of time? Menqingzi pursed his lips. He looked at the two jade slips in his hands, and his heart was quite heavy. From his perspective, he could not imagine the future. But it was not obstacle, a sense of urgency arose in his heart. Without strength, he is the target of being slaughtered in any era, let alone the following years. The inheritance of the underworld was born. This has just begun, and there are already immortals. The king appears, and even if a quasi-immortal emperor appears next, Menqingzi is not surprised. If he wants not to become an ant, he can only make himself stronger. At least he must be a strong ant. In order to avoid threats, even no strength to resist. The other side. In boundless chaos. The figure of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain slowly emerged. He stood on the boundless chaos, with the wind roaring around him, as cold as a sword, cutting through the void, without the strength of the immortal realm. It is estimated that within a moment, it will be cut into powder by the chaotic wind. As for the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, his strength has reached the peak of the immortal king. For him, this little influence is better than nothing. He can't even touch a corner of his clothes. Hateful. After the Lord of Tianmang Mountain appeared, he cursed angrily. After some planning, the two people who were still sure of victory, but in the blink of an eye, the situation suddenly changed. Although he barely escaped, Lu Qingyu being left behind. In this way, the two of them suffered a big loss. Originally, the two immortal kings joined forces and looked at all the worlds, not to mention walking sideways, but they had some ability to protect themselves. Now Lu Qingyu has been arrested, leaving me alone. That would be troublesome. As the saying goes, it is difficult for two fists to defeat four hands. Even if the Lord of Tianmang Mountain is proud, he does not think that he alone can compete with the entire world. If so, it's enough that he was the Lord of the underworld a long time ago. But it's a pity that he is not, and he can't do that, alone, with the supreme grace of Gaia in all realms. If Lu Qingyu is caught, he will inevitably be taken back to the God realm. Once he reaches the God realm, everything will be over. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain frowned and stood in the chaos, his mood fluctuating. According to the original plan of the two of them, after getting rid of the people sent by the Lu family, the descendants of Lu Qingyu's lineage would be allowed to the news of the quasi-immortal emperor walking in the God realm. The descendants of Lu Qingyu are also considered to be of high authority in the Lu clan. They have a lot of say. With these people, they can help spread the news. It can definitely be done in a short time. Let all the forces in the God realm know the news of the quasi-immortal emperor. In this way, countless immortal kings will come and they will definitely get what they want from the master of Tianji. But now, I never expected that there were so many flaws in the plan of the two of them. If only it was just Taishu, the two of them could stabilize the situation. Even if you can't beat him, it's still okay to leave if you want. but who would have thought that there would be a Meng Qingzi in the end? Lu Qingyu's arrest was a minor matter, but whether his descendants would be liquidated together was a serious problem. Logically speaking, only Lu Qingyu joined the underworld. His descendants should not be implicated. But it is foreseeable that Lu Qingyu's descendants may not be able to hold power in the future, destined to be pushed to the margins. But the good thing is that the Lu family has a great business, and completing the exchange of rights cannot be done overnight, because their relationship is complicated. And before the transfer of power is completed, they still have this little say. The time for this power handover will not be very long, it can be said to be very short. If you cannot grasp it, all your plans will be in vain. I can only go to Tianji Tower one more time. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain looked at the distant void and murmured. Before, he wanted to ask the owner of Tianji how the next thing would change, but it was a pity that Lu Qingyu stopped him at that time. Came out. It made him doubtful and he didn't have time to ask. Now it seems that Lu Qingyu was too conceited. He thought that there were his descendants in the Lu clan, but there were no opponents in the Sumeru world. This led to the failure of his efforts. If at that time, be cautious, why is this? Thinking of this, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain stepped out, his figure disappeared instantly, and reappeared at the edge of the Sumeru realm. He took another step and entered the earthly immortal realm. With the speed of an immortal king, it didn't take much time to cross several worlds. In less than a day, the great desert city was already in sight. Stepping into the great desert city, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain restrained all his aura, and from the surface he looked like an ordinary person walking inside the Tianji Tower. The junior Feng Sheng paid homage to the master of Tianji. He came at the right time. Someone just walked out of the Tianji building, and he jumped in the queue and walked in. Although the people outside were a little dissatisfied, they did not dare to say anything. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain. Li Yunduan was sitting on the chair. When he saw Feng Sheng come in, he didn't get up to greet him. Instead, he took a slow sip of tea and said leisurely. In front of the seniors, the juniors dare not bear this title. Feng Sheng said respectfully. At this time, he was standing in the Tianji building. The person in front of him was the famous master of Tianji building. If he used the title of Lord of Tianmang Mountain, he would give people the impression of being an equal. Illusion. Even if he was given 10 more courages, Feng Sheng would not dare to be on an equal footing with the master of Tianji. Sit down. Li Yun was a little funny. He waved his sleeves and pointed to the chair next to him. After Feng Sheng sat down, Li Yun glanced at the other party's panel and instantly understood the purpose of the other parties coming here. He said nonchalantly, "Did your plan fail this time?" "Everything is as the seniors said." The Lord of Tianmang Mountain said bitterly. "Ah." Li Yun chuckled, non-committal. From the very beginning of the opponent's plan, Li Yun had already guessed that the opponent would definitely lose. With just 2 immortal kings, he arranged 3 formations. Maybe there is a possibility of victory. But he thought the chance of staying is too low. As long as there is an immortal king who is determined to defeat everything, the Lord of Mang Mountain and Lu Qingyu will definitely have trouble walking around that day. Not to mention, Meng Qingzi and Taishu are still there, next to him. Now it seems that everything is as he thought. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain and Lu Qingyu returned in vain, and it was just a failure. Lu Qingyu himself was left behind. To put it bluntly, stealing a chicken is not a loss. Nothing is too much. "Did you come to Tianji Tower again today to rescue Lu Qingyu?" Li Yun said with a chuckle. From his perspective, to be honest, he didn't want to see Lu Qingyu arrested, because Li Yun knew the master of Tianmang Mountain and Lu Qingyu's plan, and they were trying to get information about the immortal emperor. Help him improve his reputation. If he really wants to see Lu Qingyu die, then Tianji Tower will probably have to spare a lot of tricks if he wants to become famous in all the worlds. Good. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain did not hesitate. He took out two immortal king-level weapons, placed them in front of Li Yun, and said sincerely, "I also ask my seniors to give me some advice. Although your strength is good, you should understand that beside Lu Qingyu at this moment, in addition to the three kings of the Lu family, there is also Taishu. The four immortal kings join forces, and it is not easy to rescue Lu Qingyu with your own strength." Li Yun said with a chuckle. This junior knows this. When the Lord of Tianmang Mountain heard this, there was no look of surprise on his face. The owner of Tianji Tower was already famous for his temper. Entered the Tianji Tower. It is impossible to come out without heavy bleeding. I want to rescue Lu Qingyu today, and the same is true, especially in the face of four powerful enemies. How can the master of Tianji still be called the master of Tianji if he doesn't cut himself? Two more immortal king weapons were placed on the table. For a while. Throughout the Tianji Tower, the divine light flickers, the Taoist charm is infinite, and the majestic power is like a tide, covering all directions, as if countless divine kings have been resurrected from distant time and space. That's about it this time. Li Yun nodded. A living immortal king is much more expensive than four immortal king-level weapons. Even if he wanted to continue to raise the price, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain could not find an excuse to refuse. But Li Yun understood that it was easy for him to raise the price, but the Lord of Tianmang Mountain might not be able to afford it. He didn't want to see Lu Qingyu killed directly by the Lu clan. Compared with the Lu clan who didn't trust him very much, Lu Qingyu is more valuable in his eyes. After all, Lu Qingyu will not be suspicious of him. 3 days later, Lu Xuanquan's injuries will be less than half recovered, while Lu Qinzi will be fully recovered. Li Yun spoke slowly. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain listened attentively. Lu Xianchen knew that this person had been completely severely injured, his body had been broken several times, and he was almost about to self-destruct. It takes 3 days to recover. Xiaoban, it's not easy. But that's it? On the contrary, when he heard that Lu Qinzi had fully recovered from his injuries, his heart sank. There were already 4 immortal kings on the other side, and now 3 of them have returned to their peak condition. That's it? Even he didn't dare to provoke him lightly. On the 3rd day, the 7th ancestor of the Lu clan and Lu Xianchen will return to the God realm with Lu Qingyu, while Lu Qinzi will come to Tianji Tower under the guidance of Taishu. Li Yun said slowly. As he spoke, he threw out a jade slip and it fell into the hands of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. This is Lu Qinzi's route. If you can defeat Lu Qinzi within 3 hours, you may be able to take Lu Qinzi with you in exchange for Lu Qingyu. Li Yun glanced at the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and continued, if you can't defeat him within 3 hours, then think about how to escape. Because, at that time, the 7th ancestor of the Lu family will come back to help, and Taishu will also rush to help. 3 against 1, your winning rate is slim. Only 3 hours. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain took the jade slip, glanced at the contents inside, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice. He knew. The Lu family would send people to Tianji Tower. After all, during the battle, several people came to Tianji Tower more than once. When it comes to Tianji Tower, any normal person will be curious. Although he doesn't want to be surrounded by 3 sides, but thinking about it carefully, this is the best situation. To deal with Lu Qinzi, he still has a one-on-one period. Time. But if they attack the 7th Patriarch and others, it will be 1-on-2. The 7th Patriarch himself is not weak, and Lu Xiancheng has recovered for a while. If they really fight, he may not be the opponent of the 2. Think about it. It seems that the method given by the senior master of Tianji is the most feasible. The only flaw is that there are only 3 hours. If the time is exceeded, he may be completely left behind. The master of Tianmang Mountain is glad in his heart, if there is no such news, if I delay it for a little longer, it cannot be solved by the four immortal king weapons. After all, no one will fight with each other, and they will fight with all their strength as soon as they come up. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 609. Thanks for the advice, Senior. In the Tianji Tower. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain cupped his hands and thanked him. He put away the jade slips and spoke again. Junior, please leave for now. Li Yun nodded casually and watched the Lord of Tianmang Mountain leave. He waited until the other party was completely gone before. Li Yun looked back. He waved his hand to open the system panel and looked at his current Tianji points. Li Yun sighed softly. The tone is one step closer, and the gap is still a bit big. Although the current strength is enough to walk sideways in the heavens and worlds, in his opinion, it is still a little short of becoming the legendary immortal emperor. After all, there are many shackles. This time Lu Qingyu and Feng Sheng's plan may be an opportunity. Li Yun thought in his heart. People are helping him to solicit business everywhere. It is impossible for him to sit still. At least he has to brush up the reputation of Tianji Tower. In the past, he was limited to the few worlds he had merged with. No matter how you say it now, you have to spread your fame to other worlds, such as the world of gods. Fairyland, etc. You can't. After people of Immortal King level from other worlds come over, let them test the accuracy of the news from Tianji Tower bit by bit. This way. It takes too much time. It seems that the list of Immortal King realm will also be arranged. Li Yun raised one hand, rubbed his chin, and said in a deep voice. During this period, he published many lists in Tianji Tower, and each time had a lot of influence, but his influence was only limited to the current few. It's just in the world. Even if he makes the Immortal King level list and includes all the Immortal Kings, he will not be able to spread to the gods and immortal worlds at all. What's more important is that in these worlds right now, the strongest Immortal Kings are almost the same. He is the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. If the Immortal King list is released, no one will be on the list. This will be very embarrassing. This list will be released and nothing will be done. No one will be on the list anyway. You can't see anyone on the list at all. Now, the plan of Lu Qingyu and the Lord of Tianmang Mountain will undoubtedly attract many immortal kings. At this time, if you grasp it well, the reputation of Tianji Tower can be quickly spread throughout the world at once. Tianwanja. Even the gods and immortals do not dare to underestimate the Tianji Tower. Although, with Li Yun's strength, he can actually ignore the god realm, but he still doesn't want anyone to keep their eyes open and keep provoking Tianji Tower. In order to avoid trouble, he directly dumped the Immortal King level ranking list. Let them fight among themselves to verify the authenticity of the list, and he himself was at ease. After verifying the authenticity of the Immortal King list, as long as he is not a fool, most people would never dare to underestimate Tianjilu, because there are people who can rank on this list. Their strength. Definitely above the Immortal King. I hope Feng Sheng and Lu Qingyu won't disappoint me. Li Yun looked at the direction in which Feng Sheng was going, and opened the system panel with a wave of his hand, wanting to check the two people and when they could spread the news. But after a second thought, he gave up the idea. With Feng Sheng with Sheng's bad character, he needs Lu Qingyu's help even more. Without a helper around him, he might not be able to make any waves on his own. In the immortal world, Lu Qinzi walked in the air. He gathered all the aura around him and rushed towards Tianyuan world like an ordinary person. Although the speed was not fast, it was definitely not slow either. The reason for doing this? Mainly to guard against the master of Tianmang Mountain. After all, although they defeated the combination of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and Lu Qingyu, the result was that the Lord of Tianmang Mountain ran away. Lu Qinzi knew exactly what the opponent's strength was. With the character of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, he is destined to be unable to swallow this breath. He will inevitably come back to seek revenge. But it's hard to say who to look for specifically. It might be the seventh ancestor, it might be Taishu, or it might be myself. So, at this time, everything should be done with caution. As long as you get to Dawang City, you can ensure that you are safe. I hope that the master of Tianji Tower is really like Taoist Master Taishu said, his strength is unfathomable, and even the master of Tianmang Mountain would not dare to act presumptuously. Lu Qinzi secretly thought in his heart. He has seen Taishu's strength and admires Taishu very much. But Tianji Luzu, it's hard to say. After all, he has never seen it with his own eyes. It's all hearsay. He has no idea how strong the opponent is. No. What if the master of Tianji is not as powerful as the master of Tianmang Mountain? After all, in his eyes, people who are good at deducing Tianji generally have low combat power, and are almost always at the bottom among their peers. Even if you are challenged by a higher level, it is completely normal. After passing the Earth Immortal Realm, we will reach the Zixuan Realm, and soon it will be the Tianyuan Realm. Lu Qinzi glanced ahead and murmured. Just when he was about to rush to Tianyuan Realm in one go, suddenly, on the mountain peak ahead, a figure wearing a silver-white robe came into view. This man had a handsome figure. Long, I don't know when he appeared, standing on the top of the mountain with his hands behind his back, his whole body was filled with Taoist charm, and he had a kind of scornful demeanor that could not be ignored. His hair was disheveled, his face was fair, his eyes were extremely vicissitudes, and he was surrounded by chaos. Breath. Sensing Lu Qinzi's arrival, he gradually turned around with a smile on his lips. Sure enough, everything went as the senior Tianji poster expected, and you actually passed by here. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain said. Lu Qinzi's strength is not as good as him, but if the other party restrains all his aura and rushes to Tianji Tower, he will not be able to find him for a while. Fortunately, he has the master of Tianji Tower. Guidance. I asked him to wait here early. Sure enough, Lu Qinzi fell into the trap himself. Lord of Tianmang Mountain. When Lu Qinzi saw this person's face, his pupils couldn't help but shrink, and his heart was filled with deep shock. He didn't expect that the Lord of Tianmang Mountain would make a comeback and choose him as the first target. He restrained all his aura. Logically speaking, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain should not be able to find him. Why was he still encountered by the other party? But after he heard the words Master Tianji, his heart sank to the bottom. The name of a person, the shadow of a tree. Even fellow Taoist Taishu and fellow Taoist Meng Qingzi, who are all highly respected figures, are giving some pointers to the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. It seems that it is not difficult to find him. What is the position of the owner of Tianji? Lu Qinzi was extremely confused in his heart. First, he helped himself and others get rid of the murderous situation of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, and even suppressed Lu Qingyu. After all, he was a righteous person on his side. How could he turn around? Then he went. Did you point out the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and ask him to ambush you? It seems you are confused. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain chuckled. He was extremely calm, but his tone was very captivating. He stepped up into the air, and wisps of crimson brilliance swept around him in all directions. It turned into a boundless Wang Yang, and at a glance there is no end. An extremely mysterious and profound aura is revealed. This is not a formation, it is just a terrifying scene caused by the natural escape of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. All the creatures in the entire earthly immortal world knelt down at this moment. On the ground, many people are panic-stricken and don't know what happened. It's really terrifying. It's like a nine-nether demon god has escaped from its prison and descended into the world to destroy the world. Don't worry, I won't kill you. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain said calmly. Your life has other uses. As he spoke, he clapped out with one palm, and billions of rays of light emerged. The whole world seemed to be suppressed by this sudden light, and countless stars trembled. The universe could not bear this kind of atmosphere, and it would completely collapse. Come on. Boom. A peerless hand appeared. It was unimaginable. It was even filled with the aura of immortality, covering the heaven and earth. It was the power of the quasi-immortal emperor. It suddenly came from the palm of the hand. He slapped it down towards the bottom, trying to kill Luqianzi. Give a complete suppression here. Lord of Tianmang Mountain, you dare. Luqianzi was shocked and angry. His brows split open, a crescent moon appeared, and he slashed out countless rays of sword light, turning into a galaxy, and rushed forward in a mighty manner. He never expected that the other party would be so direct. Come up. There is no nonsense at all, just take action. What is he going to do? Want to kill himself? Thinking of this, a layer of cold sweat broke out on Luqianzi's back, and he quickly took out a jade slip, crush it on the spot. This is the agreement between him and the seventh ancestor. When either party is in danger, as long as the jade slip is crushed, the other party can sense it. Too late. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain saw Luqianzi's actions, and he didn't look surprised. With his other lightning hand, he grabbed. Bang! At this moment, the terrifying power suddenly swept across the sky and the earth. It was like the blue sky was trembling for eternity. All the sun, moon, and stars were about to collapse in front of this aura. Boom! It was as if it was the hand of God, invisible to the edge, spreading from the infinite and distant void, spanning the sky, covering it, sealing off all Luqianzi's dodge space. That's too much. Lu. Qianzi shouted angrily, his brows glowed, his hair flew wildly, and he was so angry that he turned into a stream of light, soared into the sky, and went directly to meet him. Boom! There was a loud noise. After the Sumeru realm, the earthly immortal realm turned into a battlefield again. After the entire earthly immortal realm trembled for a while, countless cracks started from the center of the battle. They spread crazily in all directions. In the middle of the battlefield, an explosion broke out. There was a huge momentum, like a galaxy, a flood, and then billions of lights lit up, shining in the starry sky. Everything disappeared. Everything was white. Only deafening roars could be heard from time to time. There was even a burst of blood light, covering the entire earthly immortal world with a layer of blood light. The two immortal kings fought, and as soon as they collided, they entered a state of intense heat. They all used the special skills of pressing the bottom of the box, thinking they must defeat each other in the shortest time. Because of this, the injuries on the two people increased rapidly. Oops! At the same time, in chaos, the seventh ancestor suddenly stopped, his expression changed drastically, and he looked at a broken jade slip in the palm of his hand. His expression was ugly. Qianzi met Feng Sheng. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain? Hearing this, Lu Xiancheng frowned and said in disbelief, didn't he escape? Why did you come back suddenly? Moreover, Qianzi is very powerful, so how could he be easily found by the other party? I don't know this, but Qianzi did meet the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. The seventh ancestor said solemnly. The jade slip just now belonged to two people. They solemnly said that unless you meet the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, don't crush the jade slip easily. Now, the jade slip is broken. That's obvious. Luqianzi met the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. Since the two met each other, it is no longer important how they met. For the current plan, it is best to rescue Luqianzi, otherwise, he will be alone. With such power, it is very likely that he will be completely left there. I'll go help Qianzi, and you take Luqianzi back to the God realm immediately. The seventh ancestor quickly ordered. Seventh ancestor, I'd better go with you. After all, We can't guarantee whether the Lord of Tianmang Mountain has any tricks this time. Lu Xiancheng thought of the scene not long ago. Thinking about it now, he still has lingering fears. What if this time, the other party follows the gourd's example and sets up another killing array? Then the seventh patriarch may go by Lu Qinzi alone. Follow in the footsteps. This. The seventh ancestor looked at Lu Qinzi and then at Lu Qingyu, thought about it, and finally nodded and said that's fine. Lu Qingyu closed his eyes tightly, like an old monk in trance. On the surface, he looked as if he didn't care about the outside world, but in fact, he had fallen into ecstasy. Sure enough, I was right about the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. Lu Qingyu secretly thought. In his opinion, the reason for the commotion made by the Lord of Tianmang Mountain this time must be to save himself. Without his own help, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain would be useless by himself. It seems that God's will is on my side, and I really don't deserve to die. A cold light flashed in Lu Qingyu's eyes. At this moment, several figures flashed through his mind, including Taishu and the three kings of the Lu family, but the one who finally stayed was a man named Meng Qingzi. He will never forgot, this person deleted his own memory. He wanted to capture Meng Qingzi and see what memories he had deleted. After restoring his memory, he wanted to make the other person's soul fly away and never be reincarnated. Only in this way can he be reunited. Snow felt nothing but hatred. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 610. Outside the realm of earthly immortals. In chaos. The war is still going on here. Lu Qinzi's hair was flying, his anger swallowed mountains and rivers, and his whole body was filled with terrifying fairy mist. A ball of divine light flowed from the center of his brow, and there sat a little person, like an ancient supreme being, who was gestating, and once he stepped out, he would destroy the world. Open! With a loud shout. In the heart of Lu Qian's eyebrows, the little man glowed, as if it illuminated the past, present, and future. It is invincible and can travel across all realms. He suddenly stood upright and walked on the long river of time. At this moment, Lu Qian, it gives people the illusion that they do not belong to this world or this history. They are actually living beings in the long river of time. Just like a supreme strong man, resurrected and returned. It is a very good way to use the soul as a furnace to nourish the immortal spirit and achieve the position of quasi-emperor. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain chuckled. He looked at the villain who stepped out of Lu Qinzi's eyebrows, calmly. He had seen this kind of technique before. It was created by a quasi-immortal emperor in the immortal world. Law. The quasi-immortal emperor relied on this method to suppress him for several epochs. Then, he fell into the hands of the Lord of the Underworld. When the quasi-immortal emperor fell, he had witnessed the scene with his own eyes. At that time, the void collapse, the world was shaken, hundreds of millions of living beings were grieved, and there was even blood rain from the sky, covering the entire immortal world. When a quasi-immortal emperor fell, heaven sent a response. But in the end, that quasi-immortal emperor, his soul was still wiped away, and nothing was left in the end. Originally, countless people thought that after the death of the quasi-immortal emperor, his skills also disappeared in the long river of time. Unexpectedly, they saw Lu Qinzi using them again today. Came out. This should be his strongest trump card. Using this magical power means that he will fight for his life. Following the path of the predecessors, it is not easy for you to get to this point, but that's all. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain stands in the sky, with tens of thousands of big stars condensing above his head. They rotate together, burst out with bright brilliance, and then fall together. It's like a small universe has collapsed. It covers the sky and the sun. You said that the attempted inheritance of the underworld is not the path of the predecessors. Lu Qinzi responded indifferently. He rushed out with his backhand, and the 3-inch tall villain turned into a beam of light, destroying eternity and causing large swaths of stars to explode and turn into powder. The small universe was completely torn apart. The two are not the same. The face of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain remained unchanged, his eyes were cold, his hair was flying, the roots were sparkling, and his eyes were as deep as Wang Yang's. He squeezed the seal in his hand and charged forward. This is a supreme immortal king, attack with all your strength. That kind of scene is unimaginable, even more terrifying than the creation of the world. Boom! The Lord of Tianmang Mountain attacks, the sky collapses and the earth breaks apart, and the long river of time is about to be cut off. Kill! Lu Qinzi was also not afraid. He shouted loudly and flew up. The 3-inch little man showed a huge Dharma image. The body was terrifying, and the phantoms of all the heavens and worlds appeared behind him. Every world is accompanied by the Dharma image. Next to it, like tiny nebulae, it is breathtaking. Boom! The two collided together, the breath of life and death filled the air, and the brilliance of reincarnation circulated, as if it could make people go to rebirth. This was a strange scene between the two immortal kings, fighting for life and death. In a trance, the entire universe was reversed. Past, present, and future. Boom! The two fought against each other countless times. Countless divine chains of order were intertwined and entangled together. Billions of beams of light bloomed, each of which could pierce the universe and become eternity. In the end, a broken figure flew out. Collide. Passing through the chaos and entering the earthly immortal world, it was like a meteor, carrying an extremely tragic aura, piercing the space and being blasted into the depths of the earth. Boom! The deafening figure came out. All the creatures in the earth immortal world felt that the ground under their feet was shaking, as if it was about to disintegrate. It was shaking violently, which shook people's minds. You're too far behind. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain whispered, with cold eyes. A clanging sound came from behind him, and billions of sword lights bloomed, extremely dazzling. It was like the world was reopened. That is his method of becoming famous, and it is also unique. Secret technique. Behind his back, it seemed as if a layer of gorgeous wings were covered, turning into a divine bird, spreading its wings and soaring into the sky, leaving a large shadow. This is the first time that the Lord of Tianmang Mountain reveals his true form. This is an unknown divine beast with a purple gold body and an appearance like an eagle, but it is countless times more terrifying. It is not inferior to real dragons and divine phoenixes. Die. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain shook his wings slightly, and slashed out billions of swords of light, rushing from the chaos and slashing into the earthly immortal world. This whole world will be destroyed. Boom! 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 The huge roar could be heard endlessly. It was as if the Tianhe River had opened its gates, and infinite sword light poured down from the sky, covering the place where Lu Qinzi fell. Ah! Lu Qinzi roared. He was in a very embarrassed state, and the villain in his eyebrows was very depressed, with endless brilliance falling, and he could only barely protect himself. But even so. Soon after. Click. A heartbreaking crisp sound came out, and a layer of dense cracks appeared on the 3-inch little man, and then turned into feathers of light that filled the sky and dissipated between the heaven and the earth. Puff. The villain was shattered. Lu Qinzi also felt like he was severely injured. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could stabilize his injuries, countless sword lights surged in. His body was reduced to a bloody mess. Fog. The soul barely escaped. Before he could escape, a big hand quickly grabbed him and caught him in the palm of his hand. Exactly 3 hours. In chaos. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain withdrew his palm. He glanced at Lukinzi in his hand, calculated the time in his mind, and couldn't help but reveal a smile. In 3 hours, he quickly defeated an immortal king. This is an absolute success. It is something that most people cannot do. After all, the immortal king recovers at a terrifying speed. As long as it is not a fatal injury, he can recover in a short time. Because of this, it takes only a few years for the immortal king to fight. It is almost indistinguishable. The winner is determined. If you want to tell the difference in a short period of time, you have to take action regardless of the cost. But just now, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain transformed into his true body, and Lu Qinzi also used his trump card. Both of them used only with the unique skill of pressing the bottom of the box can the results be determined in a short period of time. If this result is taken out and spread to the God realm, it will probably shock everyone's eyes. Counting the time, the Lu family and the man named Taisha should have arrived, right? The Lord of Tianmang Mountain looked at the soul in his palm and whispered to himself. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword light shot from the end of the sky and stopped not far from the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. Oh! The Lord of Tianmang Mountain raised his brows, and without any surprise, he chuckled and said, "It's just like what the master of Tianji said, in 3 hours, no more, no less, someone will come just in time." Lord of Tianmang Mountain, you actually dare to come back, aren't you afraid of being completely left here? Taisha strode forward, his white clothes fluttering, his sword eyebrows standing upright, his sharp aura unabashedly spreading in all directions, cutting the surrounding void into pieces. Junior. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain glanced at Taisha without any interest. He said lightly, "In front of me, you have no qualifications to speak." At the beginning. If it weren't for his own negligence, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain did not think that the other party would have any possibility of becoming an immortal king, even if the other party was lucky enough to break through. But in the heart of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, he still did not want to be on an equal footing with the other party. After all, it has been countless years since he reached the pinnacle of the immortal kings, and he even participated in the underworld war. Not 10 but 7 or 8 immortal kings fell in his hands. A rising star is really unacceptable. If it were not for Lu Qingyu, he would. I don't mind killing Taisha now. What will happen to fellow Taoist Lu Qinzi? Taisha continued to take a step forward and asked. You mean him? The Lord of Tianmang Mountain spread out his palms, and in his palms a figure that has almost disappeared lies quietly on it. It is extremely illusory, like a candle in the wind. As long as it is blown by the wind, it will disappear. You. Seeing Lu Qinzi's state, Taisha took a step forward suddenly, with the sword in his hand blazing. He almost couldn't hold himself back and stood up directly, but he restrained himself in the end. Taking action yourself is easy. But it was obviously easier for the other party to crush Lu Qinzi's soul. Maybe. The second before he took action, Lu Qinzi was the first to fall. Now that he has lost the help of fellow Taoist Lu Qinzi, he and the seventh ancestor may not be able to beat each other together. Not to mention, the seventh patriarch has not returned yet. Now, without the help of Meng Qingzi's formation, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain has completely taken the initiative. With Lu Qinzi's soul in his hand, it is not a problem at all whether he wants to fight or leave. What do you want to do to let fellow Taoist Lu Qinzi go? Taisha said in a deep voice. Not urgent. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain looked into the void, smiled and said, "Isn't the person I was waiting for here?" While he was speaking, the seventh ancestor and Lu Xiancheng walked hand in hand and flew over quickly. Lu Xiancheng held Lu Qingyu in one hand and put the other behind his back. The green flag floated in his palm, blooming with brilliance. Now that I know, it is the Lord of Tianmang Mountain who is doing something secretly. Then when they come, it is impossible not to make any preparations. At least some defensive measures must be prepared in advance. If the Lord of Tianmang Mountain dares to take action, he will be the first to do so. Time will urge the flag in his hand to trap this world. This flag has a formation engraved inside. Although it is not as good as a carefully arranged formation, it is quite powerful and can trap an immortal in a short time. King, it's not a big problem. Feng Sheng, you have provoked the Lu clan again and again. Do you really think there is nothing we can do against you? The seventh ancestor's face was as dark as water, and he said in a cold voice. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain suppressed Lu Qinzi today, which was no less than pressing the Lu family's face directly to the ground. For countless years, the Lu family has never been harmed. Such an insult. You know, that is an immortal king. He is held in the palm of his hand and can be crushed to death. This is unimaginable to the outside world. If you had your way with me, you too wouldn't be here today. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain, Feng Qingyun, said calmly. He didn't take the threat from the seventh ancestor to heart at all. So brave. The seventh ancestor grew his beard and hair and gave a cold shout. He did not refute the words of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. In fact, that was the case. They really had no way to deal with the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. The entire Lu clan, although it is better than Tianmang Mountain, the Lord of Mang Mountain is much stronger by himself. But many immortal kings are not in the clan at all. Instead, they are traveling. Even if they know what happened in the clan, they will not be able to come back for a while. Because of this, the Lu clan can only be manipulated at will by the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. There is no need to talk nonsense. Now you, the Lu clan, are in my hands. As long as I think about it, his soul will fly away. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain opened his palms, revealing Lu Qinzi's spirit. As he spoke, he slowly closed his fingers together, as if he would clench his palms at any time and let Lu Qinzi completely disappear from the world. Don't want. Lu. Xiancheng yelled and couldn't help but said, Lord of Tianmang Mountain, what are you going to do? Don't stop. Stop. A smile appeared on the lips of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. He stopped shaking hands and said slowly, yes, but it depends on your sincerity. Lord of Tianmang Mountain, what on earth are you going to do? The seventh patriarch asked in a cold voice. It's very simple, one life for another, you hand over Lu Qingyu, I will let this person live. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain pointed at Lu Qingyu, who was not far away. When Lu Qingyu heard this, a look of excitement suddenly flashed in his eyes. It was exactly what he thought. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain came back this time to save him. My own. If nothing else happens, my life should be saved. Feng Sheng, you have a good plan. The seventh patriarch said in a low voice. He and others spent a huge price to barely keep this traitor in his family, but in the end, he was about to be released because of the frivolous words of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. How can there be such a good thing in the world? But if they don't let him go, what should Lu Qinzi do? For a moment, the seventh ancestor and others were in a dilemma. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 611. Fellow. Taisha spoke. He wanted to say something, but after seeing Lu Qinzi's soul, he opened his mouth, which eventually turned into a sigh, and the rest of the words could not be said anyway. Everyone present knew it very well. Releasing Lu Qingyu today is no less than letting the tiger return to the mountain, but what can we do if we don't let him go? Watching Lu Qinzi die? How are you thinking about it? The voice of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain was cold, as if a gust of hell wind was blowing from the surroundings, causing the temperature between heaven and earth to drop a lot, giving people a creepy feeling. His eyes were cold and faint. He glanced over his body and clenched his palms a few more times. Lu Qinzi's soul was weak and his facial features were twisted together. He was obviously suffering from great pain, but he still gritted his teeth and said nothing. Obviously. What he said when he opened his mouth, it is easy to affect the judgment of the seventh ancestor and others. At this moment, he would rather die than exchange with Lu Qingyu. Letting Lu Qingyu go today may cause a big disturbance in the future. He doesn't want to let the entire God realm be affected by just because of himself. In danger. Can you change the terms? You can make any other requests, as long as they are within the tolerance of the Lu family, I will agree to them all. The seventh ancestor pondered for a long time and said slowly. This is his biggest concession. Clinker. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain shook his head and uttered two words indifferently. No. These two words, like thunder, fell from the sky and fell on everyone's heart, making them shocked. I only want Lu Qingyu. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain said word by word. There was an unquestionable meaning in his voice. This. The seventh ancestor's face twitched, and his face was very complicated. His cloudy eyes glanced at Lu Qingyu, then at Lu Qinzi, and he was caught in the battle between heaven and man. Although the Lu family has a great family and business, they have betrayed Lu Qingyu. A fairy king rebels. Invisibly, many of the Lu clan's foundations have been weakened. If today, even Lu Qinzi is not saved, then the Lu clan will lose two immortal kings at once, and it will take who knows how many thousands of years to recover their strength again. To know. After the Underworld War. Until today, the Lu family has not restored its ancient glory. Today, it has suffered heavy losses and may never be able to return to its former peak. Seventh ancestor, make a decision quickly. Lu Xiancheng looked at Lu Qinzi, who was suffering great pain and couldn't help but urge. He really couldn't bear to watch any more. Lu Qinzi was several generations below him. He was a young man who he single-handedly promoted at the beginning, and now he is the same after becoming the immortal king. The relationship between the two was still very close. He didn't want to see a descendant die in vain. Not to mention, he died because of a traitor like Lu Qingyu. I agree to your request. After a long time, the seventh ancestor spoke with difficulty. He stretched out his palm, and the brilliance bloomed in his palm. A huge suction force came out and captured Lu Qingyu in his hand. If you let Qinzi go, I will let Lu Qingyu go. Easy to say. When the Lord of Tianmang Mountain heard this, a satisfied smile flashed across his face. He opened his fingers, and a ray of crimson light enveloped Lu Qinzi's soul and sent it forward. The seventh ancestor did the same. The palm of his hand gently patted Lu Qingyu's back, and an imperceptible symbol in his palm flashed away and disappeared into Lu Qingyu's body. But Lu Qingyu didn't notice it at all. One person, one soul. In the void, they gradually approached. At the moment of passing by, the smile on the face of the Lord of Tianmang Mountain suddenly changed and turned into an endless sneer. He grabbed Lu Qingyu with one hand and quickly tapped it with the other hand. The red light that enveloped Lu Qinzi suddenly broke out. Buzz. There was a soft cry. The bright brilliance bloomed around Lu Qingyu's soul. It was extremely gorgeous, like a star exploding in the sky. This is a move, an extremely cruel method. If you want to kill Lu Qingyu, Qinzi, the decisive blow is here. If the master of Tianmang Mountain really succeeds in his plan, then Lu Qinzi will have no way to survive. Feng Sheng, you dare. The seventh ancestor was so angry that his beard and hair were bulging. He stepped forward with lightning, grabbed it with his big hands, and wrapped Lu Qinzi's soul in it, trying to protect it. At this moment, Lu Qingyu, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain, is not as good as Lu Qinzi. Qinzi is very important. Just let Lu Qingyu go. If Lu Qinzi falls all of a sudden, it will be a huge loss for the Lu family. Let me put it bluntly. Losing his wife and losing troops is not a big deal. Pass. You'd better think about it. Is there any magical elixir for restoring the soul among the Lu family? Ha ha. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain laughed, grabbed Lu Qingyu with one hand, turned it into a stream of light, rose into the sky, and disappeared in the blink of an eye, without knowing where to go. That hand just now. He had never thought about killing Lu Qinzi. After all, the seventh ancestor and the others next to him are not just freeloaders. It is not easy to kill people under their noses, but it is not difficult to severely injure Lu Qinzi. First, he disabled Lu Xiancheng, and now he severely injured Lu Qinzi. The entire Lu clan can be said to be severely damaged. Without a million years, the two immortal kings will probably not be able to return to their peak. Even the Lu clan has a great family and a great business. It has a terrifying background, so what? How about it? Extremely serious injuries cannot be recovered overnight. It takes a long time to completely recover from the injury. There are prerequisites for the two immortal kings to be seriously injured. Next, the Lu family wants to deal with him. He has to think carefully, because he also has two immortal kings on his side who are qualified to fight back. The Lu clan probably won't dare to act rashly until they are completely sure. Seal the coupon. The Lu family will fight you until death. The seventh patriarch roared. Boom. The brilliance was overwhelming. When the seventh ancestor was in a hurry, he saved Lu Qinzi's soul with his palm, but even so, one of his arms was blown into a blood mist. Along with Lu Qinzi's soul, a piece of it was cut off. Lu Qinzi, who had been severely injured, was completely hanging by a thread and almost died. Call. Seeing that Lu Qinzi was fine, the seventh ancestor breathed a sigh of relief. The real energy around him surged, and his shattered arm quickly recovered, and then helped Lu Qinzi stabilize his injury. As for letting Lu Qinzi recover his body within a short period of time, I'm afraid there's nothing we can do. Because Lu Qinzi's injury was too serious, he could not reassemble his body by himself. It was not suitable for an outsider to help him make a body. There would be a conflict between the two. Only when Lu Qinzi stabilizes his soul's injuries can he make further plans. How is fellow Taoist Lu Qinzi's injury? Taisha rushed over and asked with concern. No problem. The seventh patriarch opened his palms, and Lu Qinzi's soul lay in his palm. Although it was only half of the soul, fortunately, it was temporarily stable. But Lu Qinzi himself fell into a deep sleep. Fortunately it didn't come to the worst. Taisha said solemnly. The immortal king is difficult to kill, that is for other people, but if a person is too far beyond the realm of the immortal king, it is still very simple to destroy those who are not as strong as him. Now Lu Qian, in short, this is the situation. There is a big gap between him and the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. If the other party wants to kill him, he doesn't need to spend much effort at all. But in the end, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain and Lu Qingyu left, and everything before them turned into running water. Lu Xiancheng looked at the direction in which the Lord of Tianmang Mountain was leaving, with murderous intent in his eyes. He said in a cold voice one day, I must personally suppress the Lord of Tianmang Mountain. This matter is not urgent. The top priority is to let Qinzi recover from his injuries. The seventh ancestor said helplessly. When he came out, Lu Qingyu didn't catch him. There were two immortal kings on his side who were seriously injured. It was so miserable. I still have some pills here that can help restore your soul. Taisha took out a bottle of elixir and sent it to the seventh ancestor, but with a look of embarrassment on his face. Not because of anything else, but because he was a little shabby for doing it himself. Before, he was in Tianji Tower. He spent too much, and now his family is completely empty. The elixirs he took out to restore his soul are just immortality elixirs. These elixirs are also effective for the immortal king, but they are very weak. However, it's also my heart to some extent. Thank you for your kindness, but Qinzi's injury is serious. I plan to return to the God realm first and think about it. The seventh patriarch looked at Taishu and said in a deep voice. In this world, the Lord of Tianmang Mountain is entrenched. Now that the other party has rescued Lu Qingyu, I am afraid that it is not safe for fellow Taoist to continue to stay here. Why don't you, my Taoist friend, follow me to the God realm? I, the Lu family, would like to serve as guest ministers and help your Taoist friend. The seventh patriarch is an old fox who has lived for countless years. Judging from the elixir Taishu took out just now, he already knew that Taishu was an extremely embarrassed immortal king, and he was born in such a declining world, so he probably had a sect behind him. But it won't be too strong. In the God realm, an immortal king like him is no different from a casual cultivator. If he could be attracted to the Lu clan and become a guest, this would undoubtedly be a good thing for the Lu clan. After all, no force would dislike having too many immortal kings. And through previous events, they had already seen Taishu's character. Such people are very trustworthy. This. A trace of thought flashed through Taishu's eyes. He was a little moved by the seventh patriarch's proposal, but he quickly gave up the idea. Thank you Taoist, I will seriously consider it after the remnants of the underworld are destroyed, but now the Tianyuan world still needs me. At this critical moment, I must not leave. The Lord of Tianmang Mountain just ran away, but he did not die. The other party is hidden in the dark and can come back at any time. Who knows what day, it will cause a catastrophic disaster. If he is no longer in this world, I'm afraid it won't happen. There is that immortal king who can stand up. If the senior master of Tianji Tower does not care, the consequences will be unimaginable. Taishu is not a cold-blooded and ruthless person. He cannot turn a blind eye to the master of Tianmang Mountain who does whatever he wants. Fellow Taoist Gao Yi, the seventh patriarch said with a hint of admiration. Taishu's lack of clear rejection meant that there was still room for maneuver. He was not in a hurry. As long as he could be tied to the Lu clan's chariot in the future, that would be enough. If in the future, Taoist friends go to the God realm, please also invite Mr. Lu to talk about it. There will be a day. Taishu responded. That old man is in the Lu clan and respectfully welcomes fellow Taoist friends to come. The seventh patriarch looked at the sky and said with a smile, I still have important things to do, so I won't stay any longer. Fellow Daoist went back this time, but for the sake of fellow Daoist Lu Qinzi's injury. Seeing that the seventh patriarch wanted to leave, Taishu seemed to have thought of something, and he suddenly said, Good. The seventh patriarch nodded and asked with a puzzled look on his face, does fellow Taoist have any way to restore the soul? Although Taishu was very poor, it does not mean that there is no secret method to restore the soul. After all, there are countless mysterious techniques in the world, and no one can be sure. In an unknown world, there is a secret that can defy the heavens. Magical skills. I'm not sure either. Taishu thought for a moment and said in deep thought, do you still remember the master Tianji that I mentioned before? The owner of Tianji? The seventh patriarch was stunned and said in confusion, didn't fellow Taoists say that the Tianji building master is only proficient in deducing Tianji? Is it possible that he is also good at healing injuries? If this is really the case, the importance of the Tianji poster needs to be re-evaluated. As we all know, in the fantasy world, the people who should not be offended the most are those who are proficient in unpopular methods, such as alchemy, weapon refining, formations, etc. secret, etc. Such people may not have high fighting ability. But you never know when you will need such a person. If you accidentally offend someone and cause them to not help you, it will be a lot of fun. What's more important is that anyone who is proficient in one of these methods has a terrifying network of connections. If you offend one, you may offend a group of terrifying beings. As for the master of Tianji, he is only proficient in deducing Tianji. If he is also proficient in alchemy and other methods, it will be extremely terrifying. Fellow Taoist misunderstanding. Taishu quickly opened his mouth to defend himself. Senior Tianji building master doesn't seem to know how to refine elixirs, but his deduction of Tianji is unique. With the help of Senior Master Tianji, we may be able to find some miraculous medicine that can restore Taoist friend Lu Qinzi's soul injury in a short period of time. Oh! The seventh patriarch raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, how can it still be like this?